Chapter 3284. Devouring Sacred Souls, the Ghost Emperor suddenly screamed, causing Nie Tian's eyes to widen. In the next moment, he reacted instantly. With a move of his body, he flew directly towards Gigu Curse the World. Nie Tian, you must stop him. If the two Sky Evolution Sacred Souls are focused on that girl, she will be killed instantly. The Ghost Emperor's voice continued to ring out in panic. It was obvious that Kuyo Anaguchi had already thought of this. He would transfer the pressure of the two Sky Evolution Sacred Souls to Jingyue while he merged with the two Sacred Souls. He did not care about Jingyue's life or death. Bastard! Nie Tian let out a thunderous roar as he hovered in the air. His eyes were filled with a terrifying coldness, as if he had turned into a ferocious beast. However, he was too far away from Kuyo Anaguchi, so it was too late for him to make a move. There was only one way left, the extreme demon destruction seal. In an instant, Nie Tian did not hesitate. The demonic and godly energy in his body became violent and charged toward his martial physique. Boom! The terrifying demonic and godly energy was like a raging wave that surged toward the demonic eye. In the next instant, Nie Tian's demonic eye unleashed its terrifying power, and the extreme demon destruction seal appeared, making him look even more demonic. Die! In the next moment, he did not hesitate. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he roared. The demonic eye trembled, and a ray of light appeared. It pierced through the air with extreme murderous intent and whizzed towards the two celestial evolution saint souls in the air. Even if he destroyed the Sky Evolution's Sacred Souls, he would not let Jingyue die. Kuyo Anaguchi suddenly felt a chill. His eyes flickered and his face was filled with unconcealable shock. The ray of light from the demonic eye was extremely murderous, as if it could destroy everything in its path. Kuyo Anaguchi did not expect that Nie Tian, who had just stripped off the Holy Soul Curse seal, could actually burst out with such terrifying power in an instant. And that ray of eye power was clearly trying to destroy the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. Absolutely not. Kuyo Anaguchi roared. He stretched out his hand and forcefully sucked in a divine soul of divine evolution. Pooh! At this moment, the light from the eye power whizzed out, and the other divine soul of Sky Spill was directly split into two. Nie Tian's extreme demon annihilation seal had once killed the burial Shura. Although the Sky Evolution Saint Soul was strong, it was only a spiritual soul after all. How could it withstand the power of the extreme demon annihilation seal? Damn it! Kuyo Anaguchi's eyes trembled and he let out a low roar. His figure immediately moved and he flew towards the other half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. At the same time, Nie Tian arrived at Jingyue's side. Boom! At this moment, the Sky Evolution Saint Soul that had been sucked in by Kuyo Anaguchi had already integrated into the sacrificial array. Suddenly, the entire array shook as if it was about to collapse. Jingyue could not bear the sudden terrifying power, and she screamed in pain. Nie Tian frowned. Without hesitation, the 9 extremities appeared in his hand. He opened it instantly and placed Jingyue and the sacrificial array into the 9 extremities. With the sacrificial array and the power of a Sky Evolution Saint Soul, that girl should be able to withstand it. Let's leave the rest to Old Man Hua, the Ghost Emperor said in a deep voice. Nie Tian nodded in agreement, his eyes flashing with a sharp light. Whether Jingyue could withstand it would depend on herself. Even if Nie Tian was by her side, he would not be able to help much. In the next moment, Nie Tian's figure moved, and he directly controlled the other half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul in his palm. The sudden change of events caused the eyes of the people below to tremble. They had no idea what was going on. The power Nie Tian had unleashed just now was simply too terrifying and could even be said to be world-shaking. At this moment, Nie Fenghua and Huang Wujiang also became nervous. They stared at the crowd around them and were constantly on guard against any strange movements. Nie Fenghua, in particular, was even more nervous. When he first arrived, he had already sensed that apart from the enemies that he could see in front of him, there were also many strong cultivators hiding in the void. Obviously, Kuyo Onaguchi had made thorough preparations to ensure that nothing would go wrong. However, Kuyo Onaguchi had obviously underestimated Nie Tian's power. Nie Tian's sudden outburst had far exceeded his expectations. "Where's Jing Yue?" High up in the sky, Kuyo Onaguchi steadied himself. When he turned around, he found that Jing Yue had disappeared. His expression changed, and he roared, "She's safe." Nie Tianling smiled coldly, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. He said coldly, "Kuyo Onaguchi, you should think carefully about how you're going to survive next." With that, Nie Tian's lips curled into a strange smile. Then he suddenly raised his head and directly swallowed half of the Sky Evolution's Saint Soul. That's right. He had directly swallowed the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. "You?" Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes trembled, and he let out a strange cry. He had never thought that Nie Tian would be so ferocious that he would swallow half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. Boom! In the next moment, Nie Tian's body suddenly shook and a terrifying force shot up into the sky, causing his entire body to release an incomparably terrifying aura. Waves of wild power surged in the void, as if it wanted to crush the heaven and earth. Kuyo Onaguchi was stunned. Under the impact of the wild power, he could not help but take a few steps back. Awesome! At that moment, Nie Tian's face was incomparably ferocious. His eyes were extremely cold, and he actually roared like a wild beast. His entire body's aura continued to skyrocket. The power of half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul had pushed his martial body to the extreme. At that moment, he was suffering terrible pain, but he did not care at all. What he wanted was power. "Fight!" Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes trembled, and he growled. Then, he followed Nie Tian's example and directly swallowed half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. Of the two Sky Evolution Saint Souls in the Zhangtian seal, one was sucked into the sacrificial array and was being absorbed by Jing Yue. As for the other soul, it was split into two by Nie Tian. He and Kuyo Onaguchi each had half. Boom! After swallowing the Sky Evolution Saint Soul, Kuyo Onaguchi's entire body released a terrifying aura. Waves of wild power were extremely terrifying. In the next moment, he could not bear the pain and directly let out a tragic cry, like a pig being slaughtered. Although his cultivation level was higher than Nie Tian's, his martial body was far inferior to Nie Tian's. Nie Tian could withstand half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul, but it did not mean that Kuyo Onaguchi could do the same. Everyone looked at the two people high up in the sky, and their eyes trembled. They were all so shocked that they could not speak. They had no idea what was going on. However, they could see that Nie Tian and Kuyo Onaguchi were currently fusing a powerful force. The scene was dead silent. No one dared to breathe. Only Nie Tian's crazy cries and Kuyo Onaguchi's miserable cries could be heard. Nie Fenghua and desolate Ghost Boundless came to a place not far from Nie Tian and guarded him vigilantly. After a while, Nie Tian and Kuyo Onaguchi calmed down. The two's aura was very terrifying. It was like a stormy sea crashing into the surroundings. It was as if their every movement could cause the world to shake. "Father, I'm done." At this moment, Nie Tian's body froze. He suddenly looked at Nie Fenghua, and the corners of his mouth curled up as he said loudly. In a very short time, Nie Tian had successfully fused half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. Chapter 3285. The father and son joined forces to kill in all directions. Violent and bold words reverberated in the void, causing one's blood to boil. Boom! Boom! Nie Fenghua and Nie Tian's bodies shook at the same time. A powerful aura soared into the sky, rolling and whistling, attacking the void, causing the space to tremble. "Ha ha ha, my son, Nie Fenghua, will not lose to anyone." Nie Fenghua turned to look at Nie Tian and laughed wildly. He felt that Nie Tian's aura was not inferior to his, and even the aura of his martial body was above his. Kuyo Anaguchi, it's time for you to die. Nietion's eyes darkened, and his incomparably murderous gaze locked onto Kuyo Anaguchi. His entire body's killing intent was like a solid substance, whistling in the void. His entire body was incomparably sharp, like a sharp sword, as if it could tear everything apart. Mphumph. Kuyo Anaguchi sneered. His gaze was incomparably gloomy, and his eyes flickered with a sharp light. He said coldly, "Father and son joining forces? Today, I will let you and your son go to hell together." Boom! As the cold voice fell, a terrifying aura was released from Kuyo Anaguchi's body. It was surging like killing intent, and the void was about to explode. Nietion's gaze darkened, and his expression changed. He did not expect that Kuyo Anaguchi's speed of fusing with the Divine Evolution Saint Soul would be so fast, even faster than him. Moreover, after Kuyo Anaguchi had fused with the half of the Divine Evolution Saint Soul, his strength had increased greatly. His entire aura had increased by several times, and the power in his body was about to explode, condensing into a gale around him. It was extremely terrifying. After Nietion fused with the half of the Divine Evolution Saint Soul, the third star mark in his body had slightly loosened, but there were still no signs of it being unsealed. It seemed that unsealing the third star mark required a complete Divine Evolution Saint Soul. Because of this, after Nietion merged with the Sky Evolution Saint Soul, his strength did not increase much. There was no qualitative change. Kuyo Anaguchi's martial body was clearly not as strong as Nietion's, but the speed at which he merged with the Sky Evolution Saint Soul and the increase in his strength far surpassed Nietion's. It was really strange. Ha ha ha! Kuyo Anaguchi looked at Nietion and laughed maniacally. Nie Fenghua. Nietion, you didn't expect this, did you? After fusing with the Sky Evolution Saint Soul, my strength has risen to such a level. I'll tell you the truth. The Celestial Evolution Saint Soul is the divine soul left behind by the ancestors of the Saint Soul Ghost Valley race. This Dean is a descendant of the Saint Soul Ghost Valley, so both my bloodline and divine soul are highly compatible with the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul. As for you, Nietion, even if you fuse with half a Divine Evolution Saint Soul, you will not be able to absorb the power of the Saint Soul. Now, even if you and your father join forces, you will not be able to defeat me. The arrogant voice echoed in the void, showing Kuyo Anaguchi's madness. QL11, his strength had indeed increased a lot compared to before. No wonder he was so arrogant. Nietion's eyes narrowed. So the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul was left behind by the ancestors of the Ghost Valley race. No wonder Kuyo Anaguchi could fuse so well with the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul. Today, I will kill you and your father. I will use your blood to pay tribute to the ancestors of the Ghost Valley race. Then, Kuyo Anaguchi took a step forward. His chi was wild and murderous. Waves of violent energy were released from his body. The void suddenly trembled as if it was going to collapse at any time. You? Nie Fenghua sneered. He took a step forward and released his chi crazily. Bang! Instantly, in the sky, the two terrifying chi clashed against each other. After a muffled rumble, a violent shockwave spread out in all directions like a tsunami. Kuyo Anaguchi and Nie Fenghua retreated at the same time and stabilized themselves at the same time. The two's chi clashed and were equally matched. Nie Fenghua, it seems that I have underestimated you. Kuyo Anaguchi smiled coldly. Then a violent talisman appeared in his palm, and he shouted, "Now, I will show you how terrifying the Ghost Valley race is." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, the talisman turned into a whirlpool in the air. Then a black lotus bloomed. Instantly, waves of incomparably violent energy surged in the air. Sword and saber fusion kill. Nie Fenghua's eyes darkened. He was not afraid at all. The broken sword and the broken saber appeared and merged together. Instantly, a terrifying chi appeared, directly affecting the chi of heaven and earth. Saint Heaven-defying sword, heavenly sword reversing the sun. At the same time, Nietian also made his move. With a low roar, he gathered all of his aura, and his sword intent burst forth to the extreme. It was as sharp as a blade, and it whistled through the air. Very good. I will kill you and your son. Seeing this, Gigu Curse World's eyes flashed with coldness as he sneered. After that, his silhouette flickered as he slammed his palm downwards. Gigantic black lotuses bloomed as a terrifying dark sword energy was released, oppressing the surrounding space as it bombarded towards Nie Fenghua and Nie Tian. Kill! Kill! Nie Fenghua and Nie Tian let out explosive roars at the same time and attacked simultaneously. The void shook violently as two terrifying forces condensed into sharp shadows in the air, whizzing out with a whistling sound. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Bang, bang, bang. In the next instant, three terrifying forces collided in the air, causing the space to tremble violently. After that, a violent explosion occurred, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. It was as if doomsday had arrived. Chi, chi, chi. The violent energies collided, causing ear-piercing sounds to ring out unceasingly. It was extremely terrifying. Too terrifying. Everyone was shocked to the extreme and couldn't help but exclaim. Kuyo Onaguchi, Nie Fenghua, and Nie Tian were all incomparably powerful. If they were to fight head-on, even the heavens and earth would be destroyed. Bang! At this moment, a loud explosion boomed out as that frightening black lotus shattered into pieces, turning into streams of dark energy that shot out into the void. Damn it! At this moment, Kuyo Onaguchi roared. Instantly, he felt a terrifying pressure appear, forcing him to retreat. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Kuyo Onaguchi's silhouette was blasted thousands of meters away. A trace of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. However, after his silhouette stabilized, a cold smile appeared on his face. He fought 1 against 2, confronting Nie Fenghua and Nie Tian head-on. Although he suffered some losses, it didn't matter. His real killer move wasn't him, but someone else. Kuyo Onaguchi, you're dead meat. Nie Fenghua's eyes trembled violently in the air. His silhouette rushed over like a sharp arrow, extremely swift and fierce. He wanted to take advantage of the situation and directly kill Kuyo Onaguchi. Father, watch out. However, at this moment, Nie Tian's expression suddenly changed. He screamed, his voice becoming sharp and ear-piercing. Die! Almost at the same time, in the air, a low and cold voice rang out. It was hoarse and gloomy, like a funeral bell from hell. Chapter 3286. Boom! Crack, crack, crack. In the void, a black blade suddenly appeared, causing the space to tremble. Then, wherever the black blade passed, the void directly collapsed. This black blade looked ordinary, but the aura it exuded was extremely terrifying. It was extremely sharp, extremely dark, and carried an extremely strong aura of death. And the target of this black blade was none other than Nie Fenghua. At this moment of life and death, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and astral soul wings appeared on his back. At the same time, he activated the astral soul shield and the heavenly water armor. His figure moved in an instant, using his body as a shield, and collided with the black blade. Nie Tian. At the same time, Nie Fenghua felt that something was wrong. He suddenly turned around and saw that Nie Tian had already arrived beside him. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he screamed, "Bang! Bang, bang, bang!" And in the next instant, the black blade struck, darkness descended, and a muffled sound rang out in the void. The astral soul shield and the heavenly water armor outside Nie Tian's body directly collapsed. Puff! Then, the sound of flesh being torn apart rang out, and the black blade directly pierced through Nie Tian's chest. Bang! Then, the black blade fell, bombarding Nie Fenghua's body, but it was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and it only made Nie Fenghua retreat a few steps. Nie Tian's martial body was incomparably strong, comparable to a magical beast. His body was the strongest shield, absorbing most of the impact of the black blade. Nie Tian. Nie Fenghua stabilized his figure, took a step forward, and came to Nie Tian's side, and saw that Nie Tian's face was black and extremely ugly. That black blade seemed to contain some kind of poison, and the poison was extremely strong. Nie Tian's face was tense, and he felt that there was a terrifying force in his body, frantically devouring his blood, as if there were thousands of ants nibbling away at his body. But he forcibly endured it, glanced at Nie Fenghua, and shook his head, indicating that he was fine. The scene just now was really too dangerous. Nie Tian reacted hastily, and his heart was almost pierced by the black blade. However, even though it was only a hole in his chest, he was still severely injured. The black blade contained an extremely frightening evil power. Fortunately, Nie Tian reacted in time. Otherwise, this black blade would have taken Nie Fenghua's life in an instant. Nie Fenghua's martial body was far inferior to Nie Tian's. And at this time, a surprised voice rang out in the air. After that, a blurry shadow appeared and laughed. You wanted to kill me, but you actually hit my son. You father and son are really interesting. Despicable villain. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. His divine sense locked on the black shadow, and he snarled coldly. QL11, this black shadow had obviously been lurking in the void for a long time. His aura had already become one with the void, so Nie Tian had never discovered his existence. The moment he made his move, his aura fluctuated, and Nie Tian was aware of it. Kid, your martial body is really abnormally strong. You can still live after being hit by this Night King's Blade of Darkness. Interesting. The black robe swayed and said in a low voice. He did not expect that Nie Tian was hit by the Blade of Darkness and did not die. The strength of his martial body was incredible. Night King, don't underestimate this kid. He is not an ordinary martial artist. And in another high altitude, Kuyo Onaguchi sneered and said, Night King, please kill this kid. Oh, Night King was puzzled. His body released a touch of coldness. He glanced at Nie Fenghua and asked, What about Nie Fenghua? Leave it to me. Kuyo Onaguchi sneered and said, This evil disciple. Let this dean kill him with my own hands. Very well, Yuong replied with a shrill voice. His figure moved and disappeared into the void again. Nie Fenghua's eyes trembled and he looked nervous. That guy called Night King was very good at hiding. He actually disappeared in the blink of an eye. Father, leave this guy to me. You go and take care of Kuyo Onaguchi. Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile, and he said in a low voice, Okay. Nie Fenghua was stunned for a moment, but he immediately felt the determination in Nie Tian's eyes. He nodded and flew towards Kuyo Onaguchi. Nie Tian took a deep breath, and then the 9 dragon veins in his body started to circulate crazily. His body let out an earth-shattering dragon roar. Then his body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion improved a lot. He had actually forced the poison out of the Blade of Darkness. Good kid, you have some strength. I am more and more interested in you, my prey. In the void, Night King's voice was heard. There was a hint of coldness in his voice. It was obvious that he did not see Nie Tian as a real opponent, but as a prey that was difficult to deal with. However, as a hunter, he liked to hunt powerful prey. If it was an ordinary prey, he would not be interested at all. Who is the prey? That is not certain. Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile, and he thought to himself. At this moment, he moved his mind and entered the 4 gods' soul stones. The 4 gods' soul stones were obtained by Nie Tian from others when he was at the end of his heaven's choice. The 4 gods' soul stones could lock onto the divine sense of a martial artist thousands of miles away. To a hidden martial artist like Night King, it was a fatal blow. Kill! At this moment, the other martial artists moved at the same time. Their roars were like a tsunami, and their violent aura was extremely terrifying. Like a rolling tide, they pressed towards Nie Tian. Come on! When Nie Tian saw this, he was not afraid at all. With a roar, the sword within his body surged. Suddenly, 12 heaven-destroying sword shadows appeared and soared into the sky. They were like 12 angry dragons, attacking the void. Boom, boom, boom. The sword shadows roared like thunder and roared like wild beasts, attacking the terrifying aura in the void. Nyetian, let me help you. On the other side, a voice sounded. It was Desolate Ghost. Roar! The renegade god Rakshasa appeared in his hand. His entire body surged with incomparably violent starry runes. He stabbed out with his spear, and a huge azure dragon appeared. The dragon's roar shook the heavens and the earth, as if it wanted to shatter the void. As soon as Desolate Ghost made his move, he used his strongest attack. He directly used the Azure Dragon Star Soul. Boom! In the next moment, an incomparably violent sound rang out. Under the joint attack of Nyetian and Boundless Ghost Desolation, the oppressive aura in the air was directly shattered. Countless cultivators were forced back by the impact of the violent force. Kill! At this moment, the corners of Nyetian's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He stabbed out with a starry heaven slash. Countless sword shadows whizzed out, and like thousands of demons dancing, they pressed down on the group of martial artists. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, wherever the sword shadows landed, blood splattered everywhere. Countless martial artists died on the spot. Not even their bones were left. At the same time, Nyetian's eyes narrowed slightly. He then looked at the void, and his lips curled up incomparably cold. Chapter 3287. A single slash with the 4 god soul stones in hand. Nyetian had long since learned the location of the enemy's hiding place. However, he did not attack immediately. Instead, he waited for the best time to attack. Swoosh! At this moment, the lurker could not hold it in any longer and instantly attacked. A black blade appeared in the void and attacked Nyetian. Nyetian's eyebrows furrowed slightly as he tilted his body slightly. The black blade brushed past his shoulder and left a horrifying wound on it. Blood instantly gushed out of the wound and dyed half of his body red. In the void, the Night Lord's surprised voice sounded. He did not know if Nyetian was lucky or if he was prepared. Impossible. He can't know where I'm hiding. The Night Lord's figure moved, and he thought to himself. His identity was the Night Lord of the Myriad Domain's #1 assassin organization, the Dark Knight. His strength was already at the peak of the rank 9 pseudo-sage. In addition to his almost unfathomable stealth ability, countless experts had died in his hands. No one had ever been able to sense his existence. The strength of Nyetian's martial body had indeed exceeded his expectations. However, he absolutely did not believe that Nyetian could sense his location. Hiding your head and showing your tail? What kind of ability is that? Nyetian's figure stabilized, and he let out a low roar. He looked around and pretended that he could not sense the Night Lord's existence. That attack just now was really luck. This kid can't sense my existence. The Night Lord's eyes darkened when he saw this scene, and he secretly laughed in his heart. Then, he changed his position a few more times. Nyetian did not turn around as he moved. This made him even more certain that Nyetian could not sense his existence. Boom, boom, boom. And at this time, when the other warriors saw that Nyetian was injured, they attacked one after another. Violent attacks covered the sky and the earth, bombarding towards Nyetian. The void surged and trembled as if it was about to collapse. Courting death, Nyetian's eyes dimmed as his lips curled up in a murderous smile. The divine demon force in his body surged violently as the terrifying divine demon sword intent surged in the air. It was terrifying and sharp to the extreme. 9 limits of the starry sky. Sun annihilation. Kill. In the next moment, he let out a low roar and slashed out with the starry sky slash. The sword image was like a heaven-defying dragon, whistling out, causing the heavens and earth to shake. The void trembled unceasingly, and an incomparably sharp killing intent filled the air. Kill. 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 In the void, Nyetian's murderous voice reverberated. It was extremely terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. The sword shadows fell and the void trembled. Waves of terrifying power surged out, and countless martial artists were drowned, dying tragically. These cultivators were not weak. Most of them were pseudo-sacred realm experts. Unfortunately, their opponent was a freak like Nyetian. With one slash, Nyetian forcefully scattered thousands of people. His figure stood coldly in the void. His entire body was filled with sword intent. It was extremely terrifying. How can this kid be so terrifying? Everyone retreated. Their eyes were trembling. It was obvious that they could not hide the fear in their hearts. Nyetian was clearly only a pseudo-sacred realm expert, but his combat strength was terrifying to the extreme. One person against 1,000 people. It was so terrifying and shocking. Those who are not afraid of death, come at me. However, Nyetian didn't show the slightest fear in the face of the pseudo-saint expert. Instead, he let out an explosive roar and unleashed a terrifying sword aura that soared into the heavens, making him look as sharp as a sword. The crowd of martial artists had a look of fear on their faces. No one dared to step forward. A bunch of trash. And at this moment, a low, murderous voice rang out, after which a silhouette soared through the air, releasing his aura. Terrifying black flames ignited around his body, resembling a demonic snake that wanted to devour the entire sky. Li Jin. Nyetian looked at that person with cold eyes and said in a deep voice, "I only need one slash to kill you." Arrogant. Li Jin's eyes darkened, and he suddenly roared. He was the dignified dean of the Abysmal School, a top expert of the Saint Soul domain. How could he not be angry when he was looked down upon by a young martial artist? He admitted that Nyetian's strength was indeed very terrifying, but he, Li Jin, was definitely not an ordinary person. 9 underworld demonic flames burned the void. The next moment, Li Jin roared and the demonic flames around his body went berserk, forming a sea of demonic flames in the void. Kill! Then he let out a fierce roar, and a terrifying fiery beast that was tens of thousands of meters long appeared in the sea of devilish flames. Roaring furiously, it pounced towards Nyetian like a moving mountain of flames. Opposing Sacred Heaven Sword, Sky Sword reverses the sun. Nyetian was not afraid at all. He took a step forward and charged forward instead of retreating. Courting death. Li Jin's eyes darkened as he growled. As far as he was concerned, Nyetian was simply courting death by charging at him. However, the next scene made his face stiffen and he was completely dumbfounded. Boom! Hovering in midair, Nyetian swung the star heavenly slash in a frenzy. Sword shadows whizzed out from where the tip of the sword was pointed, and with a violent, muffled sound, forcibly broke through the flame behemoth. The terrifying flaming beast was actually torn apart by Nyetian's sword and split into 2. No! In the next instant, Li Jin could feel the aura of death approaching him. His eyes widened and he screamed, but it was too late. Boom! The powerful sword shadow pressed down and a terrifying force was released, crashing into the void. Li Jin's eyes were filled with extreme fear, and he opened his mouth as if he was shouting something. Then his body was swallowed up by the sword shadow, and there was nothing left of him. The dean of the Netherworld Academy, the most powerful cultivator in the Saint Soul region, had died just like that. Everyone's eyes widened, and they gasped at the scene before them. They felt a chill run down their spines. A powerful cultivator like Li Jin was actually killed by Nyetian with a single strike. Was this really not an illusion? How powerful was Nyetian? And he was only a 7th-level pseudo-sage cultivator. If Nyetian became a 9th-level pseudo-sage cultivator, he would be invincible in the myriad domains. Nyetian's body froze as his sword fell. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Although he did not have the Saint Soul seal in his body, he had half of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul supporting him, and his strength had increased significantly. Li Jin would never have imagined that Nyetian's strength would be so terrifying. Swoosh! At that moment, the void suddenly trembled, and a black blade appeared, piercing through the air towards Nyetian with incomparably fierce killing intent. Chapter 3288. Savage as a beast in the void, Nyetian suddenly turned around and flew towards the incoming black blade. His eyes were as cold as ice. Huh. In the void, a surprised voice was heard, and it was difficult to hide the shock. Yuanya did not expect that Nye Tian would suddenly turn around and rush towards him. What is he doing? Everyone was shocked by Nye Tian's actions and exclaimed, "Did Nye Tian not want to live anymore?" He actually took the initiative to rush over. Poof! In the next moment, the black blade whistled past and directly pierced through Nye Tian's shoulder, causing half of his body to instantly become bloody. However, right at that moment, Nye Tian stretched out his hand, and the 9-bone eroding, soul-shackling chains shot out simultaneously. They joined together in midair, and like a giant iron claw, they grabbed toward a certain spot in the sky. Everyone was shocked, not knowing what Nye Tian was doing. At this moment, a sharp scream sounded in the void, and then a figure in black appeared. He was actually firmly grabbed by the 9-bone, eroding, soul-shackling chains. This extremely strange scene made everyone's eyes tremble, and they cried out. Nye Tian directly turned around. How did he catch the man in black who was hiding? Could it be that Nye Tian already knew where the man in black was hiding? Everyone was extremely shocked and locked their eyes on Nye Tian. They had no idea what was going on. "Clown, let's see where you can hide now." Nye Tian grabbed with his big hand, and the 9-bone eroding soul-shackling chains suddenly moved and directly grabbed Yuanya. At this time, no matter how stupid Yuanya was, he already knew that Nye Tian had long sensed his existence. But he had been pretending. But he did not understand why Nye Tian could sense his existence. In order to kill Nye Tian, he had to get close enough to Nye Tian, and this gave Nye Tian the perfect opportunity to fight back. "How did you?" The Night King's eyes trembled as he shouted in shock. But before he could finish, he was greeted by a huge fist. Bang! With a muffled sound, Nye Tian's fist landed directly on Yuang's face. Immediately, half of Yuang's face was badly mutilated. Given the strength of Nye Tian's martial body, any martial artist, even a slightly weaker Sage Realm martial artist, wouldn't be able to fight back as long as he got close to them. The Night Lord was shocked. He didn't expect Nye Tian to attack him like this. His eyes trembled with anger, humiliation, and confusion. "Do you want to know how I found you?" Nye Tianling smiled coldly, the corners of his mouth curling into a cold smile. The Night Lord's eyes trembled, and he nodded his head like a rattle drum. "I won't tell you." Nye Tian smiled sinisterly and said wildly, "I want you to die with everlasting regret." Bang! After saying that, he landed another punch on the Night Lord's face. The latter's entire face directly collapsed, looking tragic and bloody. The Night Lord wanted to resist, but he was controlled by the bone, eroding, soul-shackling chain. His Yuan meridian was suppressed, and the power of his martial body was completely vulnerable in front of Nye Tian. "Save the Night Lord." At this time, a low roar sounded in the void, and then dozens of martial artists in black appeared. Each of them had a strong, murderous aura, and their cold eyes were locked on Nye Tian. They were all assassins of the night. They came with the Night Lord, but they didn't show up. "Nye Tian, leave these people to me." In the sky, a roar sounded, and then desolate ghost appeared to protect Nye Tian, not letting the assassins in black get close. "Good." Nye Tian laughed wildly and said loudly, "Today, I will let these people see what is called ferocity." Bang! 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 As soon as he said that, Nye Tian raised his fist and smashed it down. Punch after punch landed on the Night Lord's body. His strength was beyond imagination, and the Night Lord's martial body couldn't withstand it at all. In just the blink of an eye, the Night Lord's head was forcibly smashed by Nye Tian. Blood splattered in the air, and the Night Lord's vitality was completely gone. It was an extremely tragic death. When the others saw this scene, their eyes trembled, and the shock in their hearts was indescribable. Who could believe that a peak rank 9 pseudo-sacred expert could be beaten to death with just one punch? Nye Tian was simply not a human, but a ferocious beast. The Night Lord, the supreme assassin of the night, had killed countless experts in his life, but in the end, he was beaten to death by a young martial artist. This kind of ending made people sigh with sorrow. Kill him and avenge the Night Lord. At this moment, dozens of assassins roared in unison and attacking Nyetian. Roar! Seeing this, the boundless desolate ghost attacked directly. The azure dragon Astral Soul appeared and roared in the air, causing heaven and earth to tremble. Bang! 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 More than a dozen assassins could not withstand the impact of the azure dragon and were sent flying. Since you are seeking death, I will fulfill your wish. At the same time, Nyetian also moved. Starlight heavenly slashed out, and the void trembled. In an instant, the sword's shadow whistled, killing more than a dozen assassins. Most of these assassins were rank 7 or rank 8 pseudo-sacred, and none of them had reached the peak of rank 9. In front of Nyetian, they were like chickens and dogs. Retreat. Following that, the surviving assassins' eyes trembled, and their figures moved, trying to escape. Trying to escape now? It's too late. Nyetian let out a low roar and slashed out violently. Several sword shadows appeared at the same time and flew out, landing on the place where the sword shadows landed. In the blink of an eye, dozens of assassins were killed by the combined forces of Nyetian and the boundless desolate ghost. Gasp! Such a scene caused everyone to gasp. Their eyes were trembling, and the shock in their hearts had reached a point of no return. Nyetian's figure was like a sword, standing coldly in the void, and his gaze swept across everyone as he shouted, "If you don't want to die, retreat 10,000 meters." His thunderous voice resounded in everyone's ears, causing everyone's expression to turn extremely unsightly. Nyetian stood there alone, deterring tens of thousands of pseudo-sacred powerhouses. His arrogance was hair-raising. Everyone's eyes trembled, but they immediately reacted and retreated. It was true that Nyetian was arrogant, but he had the capital to be arrogant. The strength that he had displayed had exceeded everyone's imagination, and it was extremely terrifying. Anyone who disobeyed Nyetian at this time would be courting death. A bunch of scum. Nyetianling let out a low roar and ignored these people. Instead, he raised his head and looked up into the sky. In the sky, dark clouds surged and strong winds howled. Two figures were engaged in an intense battle. They were Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi. Boom! Boom! Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi's auras soared into the sky like two mountains, standing in the void and clashing continuously, causing the surrounding space to tremble. I'll go and help. The boundless desolate ghost's eyes narrowed slightly, and he immediately turned around, wanting to join the battle. Chapter 3289. Divine Evolution Body. Nyetian looked at the two figures in the void with a deep look in his eyes. The grudges between Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi would come to an end today, and this battle must be fought by Nie Fenghua himself. No one else could interfere. Kuyo Onaguchi was practically Nie Fenghua's martial arts heart demon. If Nie Fenghua couldn't personally kill Kuyo Onaguchi, then his future martial arts path would inevitably not be smooth. Just like back then, Eternally Merciless could have easily killed Kuyo Onaguchi, but he didn't. Instead, he left it for Nie Fenghua to kill. Nyetian wouldn't intervene in this battle. He believed in Nie Fenghua's strength. She would definitely be able to defeat Kuyo Onaguchi. Moreover, there was another worry in Nyetian's heart. He had a feeling that Kuyo Onaguchi had invited an even more powerful helper. Also, the unhindered Emperor Steel seemed to be on the verge of breaking. Would the Saint's Soul Ghost Valley clan, which had been sealed for a long time, come out from the Ghost Valley? High up in the sky, a terrifying aura continuously spread out, causing the heavens and earth to tremble incessantly. It was extremely terrifying. Bang! After a muffled sound, Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi's silhouettes simultaneously retreated and then froze. Kuyo Onaguchi narrowed his eyes and looked down with an ugly expression. He did not expect that the Night King of the Night would actually die in the hands of Nyetian. His plan had been perfect, but Nyetian had been the biggest surprise of all. Nie Tion's strength had far exceeded his expectations, and even exceeded the scope of his control. Xianzun, it's about time for you to show yourself. Kuyo Onaguchi muttered to himself as he retracted his gaze. Nie Tion's guess was right. Kuyo Onaguchi had indeed hired a stronger helper. However, this helper had yet to appear. Nie Fenghua, you're very strong. You surpassed my expectations. Kuyo Onaguchi's gaze trembled. He stared at Nie Fenghua and said, however, it's impossible for you to kill me. Really? Nie Fenghua smiled coldly. Sword intent gushed forth from his entire body as waves of terrifying aura surged forth, almost tearing the void apart. Ha ha! Kuyo Onaguchi laughed wildly and shouted, Nie Fenghua, you will never be able to kill me in this lifetime. I, Kuyo Onaguchi, will be the devil in your heart for the rest of your life. Courting death, Nie Fenghua's gaze darkened as he roared in a low voice, after which his broken sword and saber slashed through the air as a tyrannical force appeared, seemingly capable of shattering the heavens and earth. Buzz! A terrifying explosion could be heard in the sky as the shadows of a sword and saber dashed toward Kuyo Onaguchi. Good timing. Kuyo Onaguchi laughed maniacally as he released a terrifying force from his body. Waves of dark force condensed into a huge palm and slammed down. Boom! Suddenly, an endless amount of power appeared like raging waves. The void sank, and the space was pulled taut by the violent force. Boom! Bang, bang, bang. In the next moment, heaven and earth trembled, and a terrifying force surged in the void. It was as if a mountain was collapsing, and it crazily raged in the space. Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi's figures retreated at the same time. Waves of chi surged up to the sky and disappeared under their feet. Damn it! Nie Fenghua steadied himself and roared. His eyes were filled with terrifying coldness. After Kuyo Onaguchi had merged with the half-divine soul, his strength had increased tremendously. His combat strength was many times stronger than before. With Nie Fenghua's current sword and saber intent, it was impossible for him to kill Kuyo Onaguchi. Do I really have to use that power? Nie Fenghua's eyes were trembling as he thought to himself. There was a terrifying sword seal in his body. Once it was released, it could instantly increase his sword and saber intent. However, this sword seal was too terrifying. He could not use it unless he had no other choice. Nie Fenghua, is this all you've got? How can you kill me if you're only at this level? Kuyo Onaguchi laughed coldly and arrogantly. You're still so arrogant when you're at death's door. Nie Fenghua roared, and the sword and saber intent in his body instantly increased. Waves of terrifying power shot up to the sky, and a layer of golden halo circulated around his body. God-sealing power. Nie Fenghua used the power of his bloodline. Kuyo Onaguchi, since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Nie Fenghua said slowly. His eyes were filled with extreme dominance. The broken sword and saber in his hand slashed across the sky, and suddenly the void trembled. Boom! In the next moment, a violent force appeared and condensed into the shadow of his sword and saber in the air. It was incomparably terrifying and released an extreme aura. Outside the shadow of the sword and saber, a layer of golden light and a layer of bloody light appeared, activating the sword and saber intent to the extreme. Boom! Crack, crack, crack. The shadow of the sword and saber suddenly fell down, and the void actually collapsed. The sky and earth trembled continuously as if the end of the world was coming. Huh! Such a terrifying power made Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes narrow and his face darkened. What a terrifying power! The crowd that was more than 100,000 meters away felt the void tremble violently. Their eyes trembled violently, and they cried out in surprise. It was unimaginable that Nie Fenghua could explode with such a terrifying sword and saber intent. Such a violent power could destroy the world. The power of the bloodline and the power of self-igniting blood chi. Is this the limit of Father's power? Nie Tion's eyes narrowed slightly as he thought to himself. The reason why Nie Fenghua's sword and saber intent could instantly increase was because when he used the power of the bloodline, he ignited his blood chi and stimulated the sword and saber intent. However, Nie Tian could feel that there was still a terrifying power in Nie Fenghua's body. It was extremely terrifying, but it had not been released yet. So powerful. Desolated ghost Wu Jiang's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but murmur. The power that Nie Fenghua displayed at this moment shocked him very much. It was enough to kill him in an instant. Nie Fenghua, I'm amazed by your strength. In the sky, Kuyo Onaguchi's voice sounded, and he said in a deep voice, "But this kind of strength is not enough to kill me." As the sound of his voice faded, a strange energy was suddenly emitted from his body, causing his body to turn illusory, after which an illusory figure appeared outside of his body. In the blink of an eye, the figure expanded, as majestic as the sea, as majestic as the sea. At this moment, a domineering aura was released from Kuyo Onaguchi's body, making him look like an emperor of the world, a dominator, overlooking and controlling everything. The crowd's eyes immediately froze. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. It turned out that Kuyo Onaguchi had been hiding his strength all along. Chapter 3290. Celestial Evolution Sacred Body. In the void, the man in black who called himself Lord Xian uttered these words. He looked at Kuyo Onaguchi with a burning gaze. The power that Kuyo Onaguchi was currently using was the Celestial Evolution Sacred Body. The man in black was a little surprised. Kuyo Onaguchi had only integrated half of the Celestial Evolution Sacred Soul, yet he was able to release the Celestial Evolution Sacred Body. It seemed that his martial body and the Celestial Evolution Sacred Soul were perfectly integrated. Fortunately, Phantom Valley only integrated half of the Celestial Evolution Sacred Soul. If he had successfully integrated 2 Celestial Evolution Sacred Souls, I'm afraid that even I might not be his match, the man in black said in his heart as the corner of his mouth twitched. He was the strongest person that Kuyo Onaguchi had invited. He was Kuyo Onaguchi's last trump card. Kuyo Onaguchi thought that the man in black had not come yet. He did not expect that the man in black had been here for a long time. He just did not show himself. When Kuyo Onaguchi wanted to integrate 2 Celestial Evolution Sacred Souls, the man in black had already seen it and almost showed himself. He did not want Kuyo Onaguchi to have 2 Celestial Evolution Sacred Souls at the same time. However, at that time, Nie Tian had made a move, so he did not show himself. At this time, Kuyo Onaguchi released the Celestial Evolution Sacred Body, which surprised him. It seemed that he had underestimated Kuyo Onaguchi's strength. Boom! At this time, a terrifying sword and saber shadow rushed down from the sky. The surrounding void could not withstand the pressure and left. The sword and saber shadow roared like wild beasts and pressed down on Kuyo Onaguchi. Boom! Bam, bam, bam. In the next instant, the shadow of the sword fell and bombarded the Celestial Evolution Divine Body. The heavens and earth shook, and the surrounding void directly exploded. Waves of wild power rolled out in all directions like wild waves. The huge blood-colored sword shadow paused in the air and then collapsed. Chi, chi, chi. Waves of sharp sword intent surged in the void, like a sky full of sharp blades, tearing the void. The entire world was in chaos. The crowd couldn't believe their eyes when they saw this. They couldn't help but take another step back. It was hard to imagine that this battle was between 2 pseudo-saint experts. Such terrifying power had already exceeded everyone's understanding of pseudo-sage powerhouses. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, violent forces raged wildly, and violent sounds rose and fell one after another. After a long while, time and space returned to normal. The space gradually became clear, and 2 figures appeared in front of everyone. Outside of Kuyo Onaguchi's body, the Celestial Evolution Divine Body stood like a mountain. It was domineering and majestic, like the Emperor of Heaven and Earth, looking down on everything. Even after receiving a head-on attack from Nie Fenghua, his celestial evolution divine body was still unharmed. Instead, its aura became even stronger, and the space within hundreds of thousands of meters was filled with a powerful and sharp aura. QL11, on the other hand, Nie Fenghua's body was covered in blood, and his body was trembling slightly. Only his eyes were still releasing a cold light, and they were as sharp as ever. He was injured, and he was badly injured. The power of the celestial evolution divine body had far exceeded his expectations. Father, Nie Tian's eyes suddenly darkened when he saw this, and he growled like a beast. He didn't expect this battle to be so tragic. Kuyo Onaguchi's power was too terrifying. I'm fine. At that moment, Nie Fenghua suddenly waved his hand, indicating for Nie Tian to stay away. His body shook, and a strong sword intent was released. The filthy blood on his body was cleansed, and his eyes released a cold light. He said loudly, "This is my battle, and I will definitely win." He understood that Kuyo Onaguchi was his biggest inner demon. If he couldn't defeat this inner demon, his martial path would most likely end here. Therefore, he didn't want anyone to interfere in this battle. He wanted to get rid of his inner demon himself. Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and his figure stopped in midair. At that moment, his face was extremely gloomy, not only because Nie Fenghua was injured, but also because he smelled the potential danger. Just as Kuyo Onaguchi used the celestial evolution divine body, Nie Tian sensed an aura fluctuation. Although it was only for a moment, he was very sure that there was a strong cultivator hiding in the void. The hidden cultivator in the void was like a pair of evil eyes, watching everything. Moreover, the hidden cultivator was much more terrifying than the Night Prince. Nie Tian's eyes flashed with a cold light, and his divine sense remained open. As long as the hidden cultivator's aura fluctuated again, he would be able to record the latter's divine sense aura with the 4 strange god soul stones. Nie Tian wouldn't interfere in the battle between Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi unless it was a life-and-death situation. And he absolutely wouldn't allow anyone to interfere in this battle. Nie Tian, don't worry about the hidden cultivator. Carefully sense the surging power of Kuyo Onaguchi. At that moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he nodded. He instantly understood that the Ghost Emperor wanted him to understand how Kuyo Onaguchi used the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul, so that he could use the Celestial Evolution Divine Body. After all, Nie Tian wasn't a member of the Ghost Valley tribe, so his understanding of the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul was far from Kuyo Onaguchi's. And with his ability to understand, it was very easy for him to see the fluctuations of the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul in Kuyo Onaguchi's body. Nie Fenghua, you should be proud that you forced me to use the Celestial Evolution Divine Body. It is your honor to die by the Celestial Evolution Divine Body. Gigu cursed the world's voice rang out in the sky. It was as powerful as thunder and as deep as killing intent. The celestial evolution body outside of his body released a terrifying aura. Strands of celestial evolution, saint energy circulated around it. Just like his bloodline power, the celestial evolution saint energy had already merged with his body. Kuyo Onaguchi stood tall in the sky like the ruler of heaven and earth. His eyes were filled with arrogance and disdain, as if he was looking down on everything. He didn't expect that just merging with half of the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul would be so powerful that he could use the Celestial Evolution Divine Body. At that moment, all he wanted was to kill Nie Fenghua as soon as possible and then take the half of the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul in Nie Tian's body, as well as the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul that Jing Yuwei had taken away. Nie Fenghua, go to hell. Then Kuyo Onaguchi said arrogantly. His voice was filled with murderous intent, like the judgment of the Grim Reaper. Then the Celestial Evolution Divine Body moved. There was a loud bang in the sky, and a giant hand slammed down. Suddenly, the power of heaven and earth changed, and a terrifying force pressed down on Nie Fenghua. Nie Fenghua's eyes darkened. He suddenly felt a suppressive force appear in the sky, as if it wanted to tear his martial body apart. But at that moment, what surged in his eyes was not fear, but a strong desire to fight. Boom! In the next moment, his body shook, and an incomparably huge sword force shot up into the sky. The sword wheel around his body suddenly exploded and rushed into the sky, making his entire body look like a giant sword. It was incomparably sharp, as if it could tear apart heaven and earth. What a strong sword force! This scene made everyone's eyes tremble violently, and they cried out in surprise. Their faces were dull and filled with disbelief. Chapter 3291. Boom! High up in the sky, Nie Fenghua's body was surging with terrifying sword intent. It was incomparably sharp, as if it could tear everything apart. Boom! In the next moment, the terrifying hand of the Saint's soul fell and was unexpectedly blocked by the sword intent. It stopped in the air with a loud bang, unable to descend any further. Kuyo Onaguchi frowned, and his face changed abruptly. His eyes suddenly shrank, obviously surprised to the extreme. He had never thought that Nie Fenghua would release an even more terrifying sword intent when he was seriously injured. Nie Fenghua's body seemed to have awakened some kind of terrifying power. That's right, Nie Fenghua had unsealed the sword seal in his body. It was this sword seal that made his sword intent rise to the next level, surpassing the limits of his martial body. At this time, he had to constantly release the sword intent, otherwise his martial body would not be able to withstand such a terrifying power. Nie Fenghua, it seems that you have prepared well for this battle. Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes trembled as he said coldly. Kuyo Onaguchi, Nie Fenghua, will suppress you with the sword intent today. Nie Fenghua's eyes were deep and murderous as he spoke coldly. The sword intent around his body was incomparably sharp, forming a sword storm outside his body. It whistled wildly, as if even the sky and earth were about to be torn apart. This was a battle that he had been looking forward to for a long time. It was a battle of life and death, a battle that concerned his martial heart demon. How could he be careless? For this battle, he would do anything. Good. Kuyo Onaguchi looked at Nie Fenghua and laughed crazily. My good disciple, today I will experience how strong your sword intent is. Then you have to watch carefully. Nie Fenghua smiled coldly. Then he raised the broken sword in his hand and waved it in the air. The entire sky and earth trembled. The simple and unadorned movement carried a very terrifying power. Nie Fenghua's every move could make the sky and earth tremble. Buzz! In the void, the broken sword and the remnant blade let out an earth-shattering cry. The space trembled incessantly, as if it would collapse at any time. Wherever the broken sword and saber passed by, a powerful and frightening energy would be left behind. Gathering together, a domineering and sharp aura filled the entire world. What kind of power is this? Everyone was shocked by the scene before their eyes, and their voices became low and hoarse while their eyes trembled without end while their bodies shook without end. They had never seen such a mysterious scene. The will of the saber and the sword condensed in the air and did not dissipate. This technique was shocking. Wham! Subsequently, an even more powerful cry of swords and sabers resounded in the air and shook the heavens and the earth. Streaks of saber and sword intents condensed in the void, releasing an infinitely terrifying sharp aura, as if they were going to destroy everything. A moment later, an extremely strange scene appeared. QL-11, the saber and sword intents in the void were terrifying to the extreme. All the trajectories of the saber and sword intents linked together and formed a single word. Kill. Kill. It was a simple word, but it revealed the fury in Nie Fenghua's heart and the strength of her will. What a terrifying power. How can this person's will be so strong? Everyone's eyes trembled. The word kill in the void released an incomparably strong, murderous aura that made the people who were more than 100,000 meters away feel suffocated. Nie Fenghua condensed the word kill with the saber and sword intense and accumulated the power of the saber and sword intense to the extreme. In the void, the man in black's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but exclaim in his heart, "This person's will is terrifying. To be able to use the saber and sword intense to such an extent." Even though the man in black was powerful, he couldn't help but be shocked by the scene in front of him. He had only seen such terrifying saber and sword intense on one person before, and that person's name was eternally merciless. The man in black didn't expect that in the myriad domain, besides eternally merciless, there was someone else who had such powerful saber and sword intense. Finally appeared. At the same time, Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly and the corner of his mouth twitched. A cold smile appeared on his face. Just a moment ago, he sensed an aura fluctuation and directly recorded the aura on the 4 god soul stones. Nie Tian had more or less grasped the method of Kuyo Onaguchi using the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. Therefore, he had the intention to pay attention to other things, which allowed him to capture the aura of the man in black. And the power that Nie Fenghua revealed at this moment made Nie Tian extremely shocked. He didn't know that the saber and sword intense could be used in this way. However, he could see that Nie Fenghua's kill word was already his limit. Not only did it consume all his sword intense, but it also exhausted his mental energy. This kill word would be Nie Fenghua's final attack. Nie Fenghua, you have amazed me. High up in the sky, Kuyo Onaguchi's voice sounded. It was incomparably deep and suppressed his anger. He never thought that Nie Fenghua's strongest killing move would be so powerful. Kuyo Onaguchi, the last move, life or death. Kill. At this moment, Nie Fenghua's eyes darkened and he let out a low roar. Then he slashed out with the broken sword and the terrifying kill word in the air. Crack, crack, crack. In an instant, a tyrannical and extremely fierce killing aura surged out. Wherever the kill word passed, the void immediately collapsed. Come on. At the same time, Kuyo Onaguchi roared and the aura of his entire body soared to the extreme. The Sky Evolution Saint Force flowed through his body and turned into the power of his bloodline. The void trembled and the space around him exploded. Boom, 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 boom. In the next moment, Tian Yan's body moved. All the power in his body gathered on his fist, and he punched out. Wherever the fist passed, the space shattered and a space-time storm rushed out like thousands of demons dancing in a frenzy, raging and roaring. What a terrifying pair. The crowd was shocked by the scene in front of them. They exclaimed in surprise and retreated once again. At this moment, just the vibration that came from the void was too much for them to bear. This was the first time they had seen such a terrifying battle scene. Boom, boom. At this moment, 2 extremely terrifying forces, like 2 ancient wild beasts, roared and rolled. Dark clouds surged and strong winds blew. It seemed like the world was about to be destroyed. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the terrifying forces finally collided. The void roared and a terrifying shockwave appeared in an instant, spreading out from the center of the collision. The space trembled and let out an ear-piercing sound. It was actually collapsing bit by bit. This was because the forces were too strong and the space-time showed signs of collapsing for the second time. Nie Fenghua's sword will and Kuyo Onaguchi's Sky Evolution Saint body were both forces that the space-time could not bear. They were too strong. Nie Tian looked at the chaotic void with a burning gaze. However, at this moment his eyes suddenly trembled and his expression changed. He seemed to have discovered something. The 4 divine soul stones showed signs of movement. The figure hidden in the void moved. Chapter 3292. Time and Space Storm. Nie Tian felt the black-robed man's figure move. His figure moved at the same time. He would not intervene in the battle between Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi. At the same time, he would never allow others to intervene. Nie Fenghua wanted to kill Kuyo Onaguchi. What he wanted was a fair battle. Die! In the void, the black-robed man's figure was like a ghost. A layer of dark halo circulated around his body. It actually allowed him to ignore the impact of the time and space storm. His speed was very fast. He approached Nie Fenghua. Clearly, he wanted to kill Nie Fenghua. When Nie Fenghua used the saber and sword will to condense the word kill, the black-robed man felt a great shock. Such a shocking technique. Only a freak like Eternally Merciless could do it. And Nie Fenghua could actually do it too. This made the black-robed man feel threatened. Nie Fenghua's age was far below Eternally Merciless. Strictly speaking, he was still considered a young martial artist. Such a terrifying saber and sword will. If he was allowed to grow, he would definitely be another Eternally Merciless. Hence, the black-robed man would not allow Nie Fenghua to live. Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi were locked in battle. It was the black-robed man's best opportunity to kill. However, what the black-robed man did not expect was that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Although Nie Tian, this oriole, was a little weak, the power that he could erupt with was absolutely not to be underestimated. Boom! Nie Tian was in midair. His whole body released an incomparably violent dragon chi. It impacted the void and directly formed a dragon chi ocean. Dragon chi had an extremely strong weakening effect on time and space. Nie Tian releasing dragon chi at this time was equivalent to taking a huge risk. At this time, a layer of time and space shield appeared outside his body. It was condensed from the boundary of the universe. He had long been on guard against the black-robed man. He had long thought of how to kill the black-robed man. That's right. He made a move at this time, not to stop, but to completely solve the problem. He directly killed the black-robed man. He had already sensed that the strength of the black-robed man was far above the 9th grade pseudo-sacred realm. He was not weaker than Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi. Therefore, his killing methods had to be special. Roar! In the next instant, the dragon chi surged to the limit. Within the dragon chi ocean, a gigantic scarlet dragon appeared. The roar of the dragon shook the heavens and earth. It's that kid. What does he want? The sudden roar of a dragon caused everyone's eyes to tremble. They couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Following which, when they saw Nie Tian, their expressions were incomparably horrified. If Nie Tian rushed over at this time, wouldn't that be courting death? Nie Tian. When the desolate ghost, boundless ghost saw Nie Tian, his eyes narrowed and his face darkened. Then his body moved and he charged forward. He had been so focused on the battle between Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Onaguchi that he hadn't noticed that Nie Tian had rushed over. When he felt that Nie Tian was in danger, he didn't hesitate to rush over. In the void, the man in black heard the roar of the dragon. His face couldn't help but change, and he exclaimed in surprise. Boom! At this time, a gigantic scarlet figure appeared and directly pounced towards him. It was that gigantic scarlet dragon. Boom, boom, boom. What was more terrifying was that the body of the gigantic scarlet dragon was surrounded by an incomparably powerful space-time storm. The surroundings collapsed again. The violent space-time storm was extremely ferocious. Oh no! At this moment, the man in black felt danger. He couldn't help but be stunned and exclaimed in his heart. Crack! The moment his voice fell, the dim halo outside his body actually cracked, as if it was about to collapse. Such a terrifying space-time storm. Even his 9 tribulations dark armor couldn't withstand it. The man in black obviously didn't expect that Nie Tian had actually been paying attention to him. Moreover, Nie Tian's strength was also beyond his expectations. Of course, Nie Tian knew that with his strength, it was almost impossible for him to kill the man in black head-on. Therefore, he used an indirect method. He used the gigantic scarlet dragon to weaken space-time and trigger an even stronger space-time storm to kill the man in black. Roar! At this time, the gigantic scarlet dragon let out a cry. Finally, its huge body couldn't withstand the space-time storm and collapsed inch by inch. It turned into streams of dragon energy and rushed into the void. Boom, boom, boom. And the dragon energy immediately formed a terrifying space-time storm when it melted into the shattered void. It rolled and roared like a huge rolling wave. Roar! The next moment, countless space-time storms gathered together and actually continued the traces of the gigantic dragon, condensing into a gigantic space-time storm dragon. It roared like a wild beast, as if it was roaring angrily. Damn it! The man in black's eyes trembled, and he growled. A pair of dark wings appeared behind him, and he hurriedly retreated. Such a terrifying space-time storm, even he couldn't withstand it. However, the space-time storm dragon directly rushed over. Huge space-time cracks appeared, as if a giant beast hidden in the void had opened its mouth to devour everything. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the man in black didn't have time to react at all and was directly engulfed by the space-time storm dragon. Boom, boom, boom. At this time, the space-time storm dragon directly caused a large-scale space-time collapse. The chain reaction of space-time shattering was terrifying, and suddenly, it was as if the entire world was about to collapse. Nietian frowned, and his expression changed. At this moment, he felt a terrifying suction force appear, and it was actually trying to forcibly suck him into the space-time storm. His eyes trembled, and the wings on his back were fully spread, flapping wildly. However, it only slowed down the speed of being sucked into the space-time storm. His figure was still being sucked into the space-time storm. Nietian. At the moment of crisis, a voice suddenly sounded. It was Boundless Ghost. Nietian spun around and stared at the Boundless Ghost desolation as he shouted, "Attack!" All right. Boundless Ghost immediately understood. With a low roar, spear intent gushed out of his entire body. The renegade god Rakshasa stabbed out with his spear, and a huge spear shadow blasted towards Nietian. Nietian's eyes narrowed, and the astral soul shield and heavenly water pole yuan armor were activated at the same time. Boom! In the next moment, the spear shadow fell and directly bombarded Nietian's body. The violent impact caused him to directly leave the space-time storm. The corner of Nietian's mouth twitched, and the wings on his back flapped wildly as he retreated a few thousand meters. Then he stretched out his hand, and rays of space-time light gushed out from his palm, preventing the space-time collapse from spreading. After a while, the space-time collapse finally stopped. Nietian stood still and let out a long breath. He didn't expect the space-time storm created by the sovereign dragon Vane's dragon Chi to be so strong, and it far exceeded his expectations. Fortunately, he used the boundary of the universe to condense space-time energy in advance, and in time, stop the space-time collapse from spreading. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. After a long time, the chaotic space-time slowly recovered, and clarity was restored bit by bit. Nietian looked up into the sky, and two figures stood there. It was Nie Fenghua and Kuyo Anaguchi. The extreme battle between the two just now had an outcome at this moment. Nie Fenghua stood coldly in the air, her long robe fluttering in the wind. Her face was as pale as a sheet, but her eyes were still sharp. As for Kuyo Anaguchi, his whole body was dripping with blood, and his body was trembling nonstop, as though he would fall the next moment. There was no doubt that Nie Fenghua won the final battle. However, at this moment, Kuyo Anaguchi was looking at the void, and his eyes were trembling with a clear hint of joy. Chapter 3293. A joke, it's him. Nietian looked at the blood-red figure high in the sky, and could not help but tremble as he exclaimed. This blood-red figure was clearly the man in black who was hiding. The man in black did not die. Nietian saw with his own eyes that the man in black was engulfed by the space-time storm, but he did not die. How is it possible to survive a space-time storm of that magnitude? Even Nietian's martial body could not withstand such a space-time impact. Could it be that the man in black's martial body was much stronger than Nietian's? Nine Tribulations Master. At that moment, Kuyo Anaguchi spoke. It was a simple name, but it seemed to take all his strength. 9 Tribulations Master was the name of the man in black. Guegu, I'm late. The 9 Tribulations Master spoke. His voice was low and hoarse, revealing an extremely strong, oppressive aura. His figure moved, and the blood on his body slowly fell off. His entire person instantly regained his fierce aura. Huh? Tian looked at the Nine Tribulations Master, and his face sank. He was shocked. He did not expect the Nine Tribulations Master to be so powerful. After experiencing such a powerful space-time storm, he was actually unscathed. Sir Master, I huffed. Kuyo Onaguchi looked at the Nine Tribulations Master with an extremely ugly expression. Just as he was about to say something, he spat out a mouthful of blood. At that moment, his life force was constantly flowing away. His eyes looked at the vertical and horizontal Emperor tablet with burning and puzzled eyes. He could not understand why the vertical and horizontal heavenly seal had already been activated, but Gue Gu had not appeared. Gue Gu. Do you want to ask why Gue Gu has not been unsealed? The Nine Tribulations Master sneered and said in a deep voice, Yes. Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes trembled and he nodded heavily. Humph. The corners of the Nine Tribulations Master's mouth twitched and he laughed coldly. His face was gloomy. Kuyo Onaguchi looked at the Nine Tribulations Mystic Venerable and seemed to notice something. His expression changed. The news that the unhindered Emperor Tablet sealed Guegu in the world was told to him by the Nine Tribulations Xian Venerable. Could it be that this was fake? Guegu, you're a good chess piece, but now you're useless. The Nine Tribulations Mystic Sovereign smiled coldly. The corners of his lips curled into a cold smile as he said, You've completed the task I gave you very well. But against Jiao Xuan, you're already useless. You lied to me. Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes flickered with endless fear and despair. Only now did he realize that what the Nine Tribulations Mystic Venerate had told him was false. Lie? The Nine Tribulations Mystic Master laughed and said, Do you think it's appropriate to use this term on people like us? We're just using each other. Without this Xianzun, you wouldn't have become Saint Soul's Dean, and you wouldn't have known so many secrets of Saint Soul's Ghost Valley. It can be said that this Xianzun single-handedly made you who you are. However, this Xianzun's help wasn't without a price. The unhindered heavenly seal doesn't have Gue Gu in the world, but there's another big secret of your Gue Gu clan. What secret? Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes trembled as he exclaimed. Is there a need for a useless person who's about to die to know so much? The Nine Tribulations Mystic Master sneered. He clearly did not intend to tell Kuyo Onaguchi the secret of the unhindered Emperor Tablet. You huffed. Kuyo Onaguchi's eyes trembled. In a fit of rage, he spat out a mouthful of blood, speeding up the pace of his death. Guegu, die in peace. This Xianzun will personally uncover the secret of the unhindered Emperor Tablet. The next moment, the Nine Tribulations Mystic Master sneered as a cold light flashed in his eyes. The murderous intent in his body instantly became so intense that it seemed solid as it enveloped Kuyo Onaguchi. It was obvious that he was going to kill Kuyo Onaguchi. Xianzun, you... Kuyo Onaguchi suddenly felt a suffocating pressure enveloping him. His eyes trembled and his eyes were filled with despair. He was speechless. Cherish your last chance to speak. The Nine Tribulations Mystic Master was cold. He reached out his hand and formed a ghostly claw in the void. If he exerted a little more force, he could instantly kill Kuyo Onaguchi. Aha! Suddenly, Kuyo Onaguchi sneered as if he had gone mad. He screamed in a strange voice, I, Kuyo Onaguchi, thought that I controlled the fate of others all my life. I never thought that my own fate would be the one being controlled. My entire life is a joke. A joke. Kuyo Onaguchi thought that he controlled the fate of countless people, but he did not know that he himself was being manipulated. He was just a chess piece. But now the chess piece was completely useless. He had become a useless chess piece. This kind of despair penetrated deep into his bones and into his soul. To be able to understand this before you die, you're not muddle-headed. The Nine Tribulations Mystic Master smiled coldly and moved his palm. Kill. Nine Tribulations Mystic Master, even if I, Kuyo Onaguchi die, I'll make you pay with your life." Kuyo Onaguchi suddenly roared. Then, the blood in his body flowed in reverse, and a powerful aura shot into the sky. Huh. The Nine Tribulations mystic master frowned and was surprised. He did not expect Kuyo Onaguchi to still have the strength to fight back. Self-destruct? In the distance, Nyetion's eyes suddenly narrowed as he exclaimed. He never expected that the Nine Tribulations mystic master would choose to self-destruct at this time. "Nyetion, help me kill him." At that moment, Kuyo Onaguchi suddenly roared. Then, his figure moved, and he rushed toward Nyetion. Bang! His voice reverberated in the air. His body exploded into a bloody light in the air. It was a gruesome sight. The dean of the Holy Soul Academy, the peak powerhouse of the Holy Soul Domain, the scheming Kuyo Onaguchi was dead. A powerhouse of a generation actually ended his life in such a way. Such a scene made people sigh. At the moment of his death, Kuyo Onaguchi chose to self-destruct and kept the divine soul of evolution for Nyetion. He wanted to borrow Nyetion's hand to kill the Nine Tribulations mystic master. Nyetion frowned, and his expression changed. He stretched out his hand, and a vortex of light appeared in his hand. It was the divine soul of evolution. Very good. Without hesitation, he swallowed half of the divine soul of evolution. Boom! The moment the divine soul of evolution entered his body, a terrifying force rushed out and merged with the other half of the divine soul of evolution. Suddenly, the aura of the divine soul surged like a raging wave. Awesome! Nyetion's eyes narrowed as he roared, and the aura around him became extremely violent. Chapter 3294. Primordial Saint's Soul, damn it! The Nine Tribulations Supremacy frowned when he saw Nyetion's aura skyrocket after obtaining the divine soul of Sky Spill. He roared furiously. He did not expect that Kuyo Onaguchi would give the divine soul of Sky Spill to Nyetion before he died. This kid's strength is strange. He must be killed immediately. The Nine Tribulations Supremacy's eyes trembled. His murderous intent surged as he said coldly. He had almost died at the hands of Nyetion earlier, so he still had lingering fears. What's going on? The crowd was stunned when they saw this scene from afar. The turn of events was too sudden and far exceeded their expectations. Who was the Nine Tribulation Supremacy? It seemed like his status was much higher than Kuyo Onaguchi's. The Nine Tribulation Supremacy was the mastermind behind everything that Kuyo Onaguchi had done. The dignified dean of the Holy Soul Academy was actually a puppet. This kind of truth was really unacceptable. At that moment, the Yu family patriarch, Yu Qi, and the Mu family patriarch, Mu Xinghe, were watching the Nine Tribulation Supremacy from afar. They seemed to have noticed something and were discussing in low voices. Could this old man, called the Nine Tribulation Supremacy, be from the Nine Mysteries sect? Yu Qi frowned as he asked. He just mentioned the Nine Mysteries sect. He should be from a Nine Mysteries sect. Mu Xinghe's eyes darkened as he said, I didn't expect the long-lost Nine Mysteries sect to reappear. The Sacred Soul region's 10 major forces consisted of one sect, 2 schools, 3 families, and 4 dynasties. One sect referred to the Nine Mysteries sect. Although the other forces were known as the 10 major forces, the Nine Mysteries sect was the strongest force in the Sacred Soul region. The Nine Mysteries sect had been out of the picture for a long time. Who would have thought that they would reappear today? The Nine Tribulation Supremacy's strength was enough to show that his status in the Nine Mysteries sect was very high. Moreover, the Nine Tribulation Supremacy had said the 2 words, Nine Mystery, earlier, which was enough to confirm that he was from the Nine Mysteries sect. The Nine Mysteries sect had always been a mystery in the Sacred Soul region. No one knew the origins of the Nine Mystical sect. This force seemed to have appeared out of nowhere and established itself as the number 1 force in the Sacred Soul realm in a very short period of time. After that, he disappeared mysteriously and left the stage. Only experts like Yu Qi and Mu Xinghe knew a little about the Nine Mystical sect. For the nine mystical sect to have a powerhouse like a ninth tribulation Xian Venerable, it was no wonder they were the number one force in the Sacred Soul region. Nie Tian. At this moment, Desolate Ghost looked at Nie Tian and couldn't help but call out nervously. Nie Tian's aura continued to skyrocket, as if it was endless, as if it was going to burst through this part of the world. I'm fine, Nie Tian growled, waving his hand to signal Desolate Ghost to retreat. In the face of a powerhouse like a nine tribulations mystic venerable, Desolate Ghost Boundless could no longer be of much help. As for Nie Fenghua, in the battle with Kuyo Onaguchi, her strength was almost depleted, and she was powerless to help Nie Tian. Against the nine tribulations mystic venerable, Nie Tian could only rely on himself. Nie Fenghua and Desolate Ghost quickly retreated, leaving Nie Tian with no worries. Kid, in this mystic venerable's plan, you're an accident. At that moment, the nine tribulations mystic venerable smiled cold and looked at Nie Tian with a murderous gaze. But it doesn't matter. This mystic venerable likes to deal with accidents. Is that so? Nie Tianling laughed. His entire body was filled with fighting spirit, and a terrifying aura surged outside his body. His sharp aura filled the surrounding space for tens of thousands of meters. He really wanted to see how the nine tribulations mystic venerable in front of him could survive a space-time storm of that degree. Kid, this mystic venerable's power is not something you can imagine. Prepare to die. The nine tribulations mystic venerable smiled cold, and then a terrifying aura surged out of his body. Rays of bright light appeared and condensed outside his body. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a giant emitting this dark light appeared outside his body. Its aura was majestic and could swallow the heavens. Huh! Nie Tian was stunned and could not help but frown. At that moment, the power that the nine tribulations mystic venerable was using reminded him of Kuyo Onaguchi's heavenly evolution sacred body. However, the nine tribulations mystic venerable's aura was several times stronger than Kuyo Onaguchi's heavenly evolution sacred body. Kid, compared to this mystic venerable's omniscient sacred body, Kuyo Onaguchi's heavenly evolution sacred body is trash. The nine tribulations mystic venerable sneered, his eyes cold and contemptuous. The power he was using at that moment was the omniscient sacred body. Omniscient sacred body. Nie Tian frowned, and his eyes could not help but tremble. Omniscient sacred soul. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor cried out in surprise. Huh? Nie Tian frowned and was stunned for a moment before asking. Could it be one of the nine ancient great sacred souls? Hua Yiru had once told Nie Tian that the third star mark of the star power required the nine ancient great sacred souls to unseal. The heavenly evolution sacred soul was one of the nine ancient great sacred souls. When Nie Tian heard the Ghost Emperor mention the omniscient sacred soul, he naturally thought of the nine ancient great sacred souls. The Ghost Emperor nodded with an ugly expression on his face. I really didn't expect this guy to have merged with the omniscient sacred soul. No wonder he's so strong. Any rank 9 pseudo-sacred powerhouse would not be able to reach the peak without some heaven-defying technique. The reason why the 9 tribulations mystic venerable had such powerful combat strength was because he had merged with the omniscient sacred soul. This was also the reason why he had survived the space-time storm earlier. The omniscient sacred soul was the same as the heavenly evolution sacred soul. They were both part of the 9 ancient great sacred souls. The 9 tribulations mystic venerable had merged with the omniscient sacred soul for a long time. His understanding and control of the sacred soul's power was far superior to that of Kuyo Onaguchi. Therefore, the power that the omniscient sacred soul could unleash in his hands was unimaginable. Brat, you were just lucky to obtain some power. The 9 tribulations mystic venerable smiled cold and said, however, in my eyes, you're just an ant. It's impossible for you to do anything to me. As soon as he finished speaking, the omniscient sacred body took a step forward. The void shook as if it was about to explode. Is that so? Nyetian felt the void shake, but he was not afraid at all. Instead, he sneered and took a step forward. His aura soared into the sky. A moment later, a terrifying scene unfolded. Waves of terrifying power surged out of Nyetian's body and formed a huge shadow outside his body. It was the heavenly evolution sacred body. Boom, boom. The void around Nyetian trembled as if it was about to explode. The terrifying power surged endlessly and attacked the void, causing it to tighten. Then, the heavenly evolution sacred power around Nyetian's body surged endlessly. It became stronger and more terrifying. Chapter 3295. How is this possible? Looking at Nyetian's divine evolution body, the Nine Tribulation Mystic Lord's pupils shrank and he screamed. His body trembled as he could not believe his eyes. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Nyetian would actually release the Sky Evolution Sacred Body. How is this possible? How could Nyetian release the Divine Evolution Body? After Curse World of the Ghost Valley fused with the Sky Evolution Saint Spirit, he was able to release the Sky Evolution Saint Body. That was because he was originally from the Ghost Valley of the Saint Spirit. In his blood flowed the same blood as the ancestors of the Ghost Valley. What about Nyetian? He was just a rank 7 false sacred martialist and not a member of the Fana Valley clan. How could he fuse with the Divine Evolution Soul so perfectly? The Divine Evolution Body Nyetian released was even stronger than Kuyo Onaguchi's. This was something the Nine Tribulation Mystic Lord could not figure out. It seemed that Nyetian's fusion with the Divine Evolution Soul was even more perfect than Kuyo Onaguchi's. That was right. Nyetian had fused with a complete Divine Evolution Soul, and this Divine Evolution Soul had already integrated with the power of the stars. The third star mark in his body was slowly unsealing. When the third star mark was unsealed, the Divine Evolution Soul would be completely integrated with Nyetian's bloodline and become part of his bloodline power. This was the terrifying part of the power of the stars. It could fuse with any power. How can that kid release such a powerful force? Everyone stared at Nyetian, their eyes filled with shock. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. In the blink of an eye, Nyetian had grown up. Make your move. At that moment, Nyetian took a step forward and the void shook violently. His aura broke through the sky as he spoke proudly. The aura around his body continued to spread as if it was going to tear the world apart. It was extremely terrifying. Brat, this mystic lord has indeed underestimated you. Kuyo Onaguchi gave you half of the divine soul of evolution before he died. He has a lot of confidence in you. The Nine Tribulations mystic venerate glared at Nyetian as he spoke coldly. His eyes were filled with intense, murderous intent. If he had known that Nyetian could become so powerful in an instant, the Nine Tribulations mystic venerate would have killed Kuyo Onaguchi right away, and the current situation would not have happened. However, it was fine now. The Nine Tribulations mystic venerate did not think that Nyetian, who had just merged with the sky's spilled divine soul, could resist him. Brat, I'll let you witness this mysterious venerable one's power. The Nine Tribulation mysterious venerable growled and said coldly, this mysterious venerable one only needs one move to kill you. Myriad Tribulation sage body, heavenly tribulation slaughter. The next moment, the Nine Tribulations mystic venerable's figure moved. His entire body released rolling 10,000 tribulations sacred power, which resembled violent runes that circled around his body. It was so terrifying that it caused the void to tremble. Bring it on. Nyetian's eyes darkened. His eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight, and he was not afraid at all. The sky's spill sacred power in his body surged violently and released an incomparably terrifying power. His aura was no weaker than the 10,000 tribulations sage body. Terrifying. Too terrifying. When everyone saw this scene and felt the terrifying fluctuations coming from the void, the shock in their hearts could not be any greater. Nyetian and the Nine Tribulations mystic venerable were just too strong. He was shockingly strong. terrifyingly strong. In particular, Nyetian had reached an unimaginable level of strength in the blink of an eye. His cultivation base was still at the 7th level false sage realm. With such combat strength at such a cultivation base, Nyetian could no longer be described as a monster. He was a true heaven-defying martialist. Everyone was trembling with fear. Their eyes were trembling and their hearts were in turmoil. The aura of Nyetian and the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable was incomparably powerful. It made them feel a deep sense of fear and awe that seeped into their souls. Go to hell. At that moment, the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable growled, and his huge 10,000 tribulations sage body slammed out with his palm. The void rumbled and exploded. Terrifying waves appeared and roared. The 10,000 tribulations sage powers aura bloomed and filled the entire world as if it wanted to kill everything in its path. Kill! Almost at the same time, Nyetian growled and his sky spill body also slammed out with his palm. The surging palm energy condensed into a palm shadow. Suddenly, the space was directly torn apart under the pressure of the huge force. Boom! The next moment in the sky, the two palm shadows collided with a loud bang. Heaven and earth became solemn, and then endless power turned into raging waves that swept through the world and raged in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. The void tumbled like boiling seawater. Space-time storms appeared and drowned everything. At that moment, Nyetian felt a terrifying power appear and directly suppress him. It made him feel like his body was about to be torn apart. Boom, 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 boom. In the next moment, the terrifying suppressive power descended. The sky spill sage body outside of Nyetian's body directly collapsed and turned into waves of sage power that surged into space. Boom! With a muffled sound, Nyetian's entire body flew out like a kite with a broken string, leaving a bloody trail in the air. His figure flew backward for tens of thousands of meters before he managed to stabilize himself. His entire body was already dripping with blood. Nyetian. The horrifying scene made Nye Fenghua and Desolate Ghost's eyes tremble at the same time as they cried out in shock. They did not expect that Nyetian, whose aura looked so terrifying, would be so vulnerable in front of Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable. I'm fine. Nyetian stabilized his body and immediately shook violently. The blood on his body surged, and his entire body released an incomparably sharp aura. He had been seriously injured by Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable, and his martial body was deeply affected, but it was not fatal. The Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable looked at Nyetian and was surprised. Then he laughed wildly. Brat, do you think that just because you can condense the sky spill sage body, you're a match for me? You're ridiculous. Your sky spill sage body has no martial technique to support it. It's just an empty shell. You'll soon understand how big the gap between you and me is. As his violent voice fell, the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable's aura suddenly soared again. Nyetian's eyes darkened slightly, and his expression could not help but turn ugly. Although the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable was arrogant, his words were not wrong. QL11 in terms of strength, there was no difference between Nyetian's sky spill sage body and the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable's omnisacred body. In fact, it was even stronger. However, the lack of a martial technique to support him was Nyetian's fatal weakness. It was like two martialists of similar strength. One of the martialists knew a martial technique, so of course his strength would be stronger. The Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable's omnisacred body might not be as strong as Nyetian's sky spill sage body, but the omnisacred body could display greater strength with the help of a martial technique. At that moment, Nyetian was like a brute who had strength but did not know how to use it. After all, the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable had fused with the omnisacred soul for a long time. Naturally, he would cultivate some martial techniques that could be used with the omnisacred soul. As for Nyetian, he had only just fused with the omnisacred soul. It was normal that he could not use martial techniques to support him. Brat, do you think you can compete with me just because you can condense the sky spill sage body? What a joke. You're just an ant in front of me. The Nine Tribulations' mystic, venerable roared like thunder. The omni-sacred body took a step in the void, causing heaven and earth to shake and the wind to howl. Chapter 32:96. Boom! High up in the sky, the everlasting holy body erupted with terrifying power and pressed down mercilessly on Yetion. Suddenly, the void stagnated as if space itself was about to be frozen. Such a terrifying palm was full of suppressive power as if it was going to destroy everything. That kid is done for. The crowd's eyes trembled violently as they exclaimed in shock. This time, the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerate released in even stronger power. It was not something the previous palm could compare to. Yetion would not be able to withstand it. Boom! At this moment, Yetion's figure moved. The aura around his body surged and was released like a stormy sea. The billowing sky evolution, Saint Energy, shot up into the sky and actually formed the sky evolution Saint body outside his body. Boom! The next moment, the everlasting holy body's terrifying palm descended. Heaven and earth turned solemn, and the sky changed color. The void suddenly exploded, and a terrifying space-time crack appeared. A terrifying space-time storm surged out and wreaked havoc in the space, emitting an ear-piercing roar. It was extremely frightening. The crowd's eyes trembled. They could not believe what they were seeing. At the last moment, Yetion had formed the divine evolution body again. It was too abnormal. What was even more frightening was that Yetion's divine evolution body this time was even more powerful than before. Boom, boom, boom. The void was chaotic, and an endless amount of power rushed forward. It was as if doomsday had arrived. Boom! After a long time, there was a muffled sound. The two huge figures high in the sky suddenly retreated, causing the void to tremble. Impossible! The Nine Tribulations' mystic venerate steadied himself. His eyes shone with a cold light as he let out a low roar filled with rage. His entire body trembled, causing his Thousand Tribulations' sacred body to tremble as well. He couldn't believe his eyes. Yetion had once again formed the Heaven Evolution's Saint body. Yetion had only just merged with the Divine Evolution Soul. How could he release such a powerful force? This was simply impossible. What the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable found even more unacceptable was that Yetion's aura was continuously increasing. It was as if a terrifying power that had been dormant in Yetion's body for a long time was slowly awakening. Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable, your 10,000 Tribulations' sacred body with the help of a martial technique is only SOSO. Yetion stood high up in the sky. The celestial evolution, Saint Energy, surged around his body, and he looked like a mountain. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Arrogant. The Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign was enraged when he was mocked. He roared and raised his omni-tribulation sacred body, causing the void to tremble. Suddenly, an incomparably dark power surged out, and a tyrannical and ferocious aura was released. It spread throughout the void as if it wanted to shatter heaven and earth. Reckless brat, I'll let you witness this Xian Zun's true power. The Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign roared like thunder as he took a step forward in the void. His colossal omniscient sage body leaped into the air and slammed his palm down. Endless omniscient sage power gathered in the void. Boom! The next moment, the void rumbled and a huge dark palm print appeared, pressing down on the void. Its aura shook the heavens and earth as if it wanted to kill everything in its path. Suddenly, heaven and earth rumbled and the void tumbled. Endless waves appeared and rushed towards everything. Dying. Yetion's eyes darkened, but he was not afraid at all. His celestial evolution, saint body, punched out, and an overbearing and vigorous power blasted out. It was heaven-defying, incomparably violent, and its aura was monstrous. Boom! The next moment, the fist and the palm collided and a terrifying roar erupted in the void. Endless terrifying power surged and tumbled. It was extremely terrifying, and the violent aura was enough to annihilate everything. The crowd that was more than 100,000 meters away felt the strong impact and retreated. Everyone's expressions were stunned, and their hearts trembled. The battle between Nyation and the Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign was terrifying to this extent. It was too terrifying. It was hard to imagine that Nyation could erupt with such terrifying power as a 7th-level pseudo-sage. Boom, boom. At that moment, a violent sound rang out in the void. The celestial evolution, Saint Body's fist shadow, directly collapsed, and an incomparably terrifying aura came crashing down. The violent power of 10,000 tribulations soared into the sky as if it wanted to tear Nyation apart. Boom! Once again, his celestial evolution, Saint Body collapsed, and his figure flew out like a kite with a broken string. However, a pair of astral soul wings instantly appeared on his back, and he stabilized his body. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were sharp and murderous. When the Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign saw this, his face suddenly darkened. He was surprised and shocked, and even a little panicked and fearful. He had unleashed an even stronger power in that palm strike just now, but it had only shattered Nyation's celestial evolution Saint Body. It did not cause much damage to Nyation. He couldn't believe that Nyation's strength was rising at an alarming rate. Why was it that the more injured Nyation was, the more powerful he became? At that moment, the Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign felt that there was a terrifying power in Nyation's body that was slowly awakening. It was extremely terrifying, like a giant beast that had been sleeping for a long time, and it was about to let out a shocking roar the next moment. Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign, is this your strength? It's just SOSO. Nyation's figure moved, and he soared into the sky with an incomparably arrogant aura. The celestial evolution, saint power around his body, surged once again. It was extremely terrifying. At that moment, his body was undergoing a transformation. Under the stimulation of the celestial evolution saint soul, the third star mark was slowly unsealed. Once the third star mark was unsealed, Nyation's martial body would usher in a qualitative leap. This kid is strange. I must get rid of him as soon as possible. The Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign frowned, and his old face was very ugly. QL11 at that moment, he finally understood how abnormal the young silver-haired martialist in front of him was. Before this, he had always regarded Nyation as an ant. At most, he was a little grasshopper who was more active than an ant. However, now, he regarded Nyation as a real opponent, an opponent worthy of him going all out. Myriad Tribulation, Saint Body. Myriad Tribulation, Torrential. Destroy everything. At that moment, the Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign's face suddenly sank, and the murderous intent in his eyes became extremely cold. His low and hoarse voice was filled with an oppressive force that made one's soul tremble. As his voice fell, the power around his body skyrocketed in an instant. The terrifying Myriad Tribulation Saint power was released, and it rolled like a tsunami. At that moment, the Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign was like a volcano. Violent and unparalleled power erupted in an instant. Sky Destroyer Palm, beyond redemption. The next moment, the Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign roared like thunder. Then, all the power in his body condensed on his palm, and he slammed it down fiercely. An incomparably powerful force bloomed, and a palm shadow appeared like a curtain in the sky, covering the sky and covering the earth. The momentum was so loud that it seemed like it was going to destroy the world. The Sky Destroyer Palm was used to kill Nyation. It's over. That kid is dead for sure. The crowd's eyes trembled as they cried out in horror. It was as if they could already see the scene of Nyation being killed with a single palm. The power that the Nine Tribulations' mystic sovereign revealed at that moment was too powerful. It was simply incredible. Perhaps even a true sage might not be able to resist it. The power of the myriad tribulations Saint Soul was indeed powerful. Chapter 3297. Heaven-defying strength, brat. You have just fused with the sky evolution Saint Soul, so you don't know how to use it. I like to see how you're going to compete with me. High up in the sky, the nine tribulations supremacy's cold voice resounded, revealing traces of killing intent. His heaven-exterminating palm had already unleashed the power of the myriad tribulation Saint Soul in his body to the limit of his martial body. The power of this palm was undoubtedly a threat to a Sage Realm martial artist. So, it wasn't something that Nye Tian could contend against. Oomph. Nye Tianling hovered in the air. The corners of his mouth twitched as he let out two sneers. Then, he said wildly, "Nine tribulations, Xian Venerable, watch carefully." Boom! As his arrogant voice fell, Nye Tian's aura exploded crazily. Waves of terrifying celestial evolution, sacred power, circulated in the sky endlessly. At this moment, Nye Tian was like a huge vortex of energy that contained boundless power. The crowd felt the change in Nye Tian's aura. Their eyes trembled violently as they cried out in horror. Right now, Nye Tian's aura was completely different from before. The aura he was emitting right now was extremely powerful, as though it could destroy everything in its path. No one could understand how Nye Tian's strength could skyrocket to such an extent in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. Nye Tian took a step forward, and his aura surged like a boiling sea. It was incomparably terrifying. The physical strength of his martial body was released, and his entire body was filled with a heaven-defying aura. How is this possible? The nine tribulations mystic venerable suddenly sensed the change in Nye Tian's aura. His pupils involuntarily shrank, and he could not help but scream. His face was uglier than if he had eaten **T. Not even in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Nye Tian's aura could skyrocket to such an extent in an instant. It was as if the beast that had been slumbering within Nye Tian's body had awakened. The next moment, the nine tribulations mystic venerable suddenly sensed something. His eyes narrowed and his old face froze. It was a fatal mistake to be absent-minded at such a critical moment. However, the scene that the nine tribulations mystic venerate saw was too unbelievable, and he could not accept it. Nye Tian's strength had actually increased. That's right, Nye Tian's strength had risen from the 7th rank to the 8th rank. It was no wonder that the nine tribulations mystic venerable was so shocked to have a breakthrough at such a time. The nine tribulations mystic venerable's senses were not wrong. The reason Nye Tian's strength had skyrocketed was because the third star mark of the Star Force had been successfully unsealed, and the unsealing of the Star Trace Dark Seal allowed Nye Tian's strength to have a breakthrough. The moment the Star Trace Seal was unsealed, Nye Tian felt that the strength of his martial body had instantly increased. It was as if a dam had suddenly collapsed, and a terrifying force surged out, pushing his martial body to its limit. Boom! At that moment, the celestial evolution's sacred power around Nye Tian's body began to condense, and the celestial evolution's sacred body appeared once again. This time, the aura was even more powerful than before. It was like a giant demon god standing in the void. Every move it made caused the world to tremble. How terrifying! Everyone's eyes trembled, and the shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. Nye Tian's aura had far surpassed that of a nine tribulations mystic venerable. The explosive power that was about to burst out caused the void to tremble. Kill! In the next moment, Nye Tian let out a low roar, and his sky evolution sacred body suddenly moved. He violently punched out, and wherever the fist passed, the void shattered. Kill! 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 The fierce and violent sound of killing echoed in the void, as if it wanted to kill everything in its path. Rumble! Shortly after, the sky annihilation palm and the vast and mighty fist clashed in the sky. A dreadful rumble resounded, causing space to turn sluggish. The heavens and earth became solemn as an incomparably tyrannical energy burst out, forming into terrifying waves in the sky. It was like a gigantic beast within a tsunami, as if it wanted to devour everything. Chi chi chi. Immediately after, an ear-piercing and terrifying sound was heard. The two forces collided in the sky, devouring and penetrating each other like two giant beasts trying to overwhelm each other. Nietion's use of the celestial evolution's sacred power was far inferior to a Nine Tribulations mystic venerable, but his power was almost overwhelming. The Nine Tribulations mystic venerable had merged with the 10,000 Tribulations sacred soul for a long time and had a deep understanding of the 10,000 Tribulations sacred power. Unfortunately, he was much weaker than Nietion in terms of power. The Nine Tribulations mystic venerable could not understand how Nietion could have such terrifying power after merging with the celestial evolution sacred soul. Nietion was not a member of the Sacred Soul Ghost Valley clan. What was going on? Little did he know that Nietion had the power of the stars in his body and had completely transformed the celestial evolution sacred soul into his own power. The celestial evolution sacred soul helped Nietion unseal the third star mark. At the same time, the power of the stars also had a strong stimulating effect on the celestial evolution sacred soul. As a result, the power that Nietion's celestial evolution sacred soul could unleash was extremely terrifying. Boom boom. A moment later, there was a loud explosion in the sky. The Sky Destroyer palm could not withstand the celestial evolution fist and directly collapsed in the void. The Nine Tribulations mystic venerable's eyes trembled as he cried out in shock. Boom. The next moment, the celestial evolution fist blasted out like a giant dragon soaring into the sky and blasted toward the 10,000 Tribulations sacred body. Boom. There was a violent, muffled sound, and the Nine Tribulations mystic venerable's figure was blasted thousands of meters away. By the time he stabilized himself, Nietion was already charging at him again. Nine Tribulations mystic venerable, are you satisfied with my current power? Nietion roared like thunder as the aura in his body was released wildly. He was extremely arrogant. Boom, boom, boom. As his voice fell, Nietion punched out again and again. Terrifying fist shadows bombarded the 10,000 Tribulation sacred body. The incomparably huge 10,000 Tribulation sacred body swayed in the void. It could only take a beating and could not fight back at all. Gasp! The crowd gasped when they saw this scene. Their eyes trembled in disbelief. Who would have thought that this battle would develop to such an extent? Nine Tribulations mystic venerable, you call me an ant. What are you now? High up in the sky. Nietion's voice was like a clap of thunder as he said wildly. The feeling of being suppressed by an ant doesn't feel good, does it? Brat, you puffed. The Nine Tribulations mystic venerable resisted with all his might as his eyes trembled. His old face was flushed red, and he was so angry that he could not speak. He was a Nine Tribulations mystic venerable, a supreme existence that countless people admired and worshipped. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? Puffed. The next moment, the Nine Tribulations mystic venerable's blood surged. His chest tightened, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Boom! At that moment, Nietion's fist came crashing down. The 10,000 Tribulation sacred body finally could not withstand it. With a loud tremble, it directly collapsed and turned into an endless amount of energy that dissipated into the void. The sudden change caused the Nine Tribulations mystic venerable's pupils to shrink. He was so shocked that he could not speak. Without the protection of the 10,000 Tribulation sacred body, he was like a pile of loose sand that could not withstand Nietion's attacks. Chapter 3298. Ninth Heaven Evil Lord, it's over. The sacred body of a Nine Tribulations mystic venerable has been shattered. He's dead for sure. The crowd exclaimed as they watched the scene in the sky. Their eyes trembled with excitement. Nietion, a martialist who had just ascended to the 8th level pseudo-sage stage, was about to kill a 9 tribulation mystic venerable who stood at the peak. Such a scene shocked, excited, and fanatical everyone. The result of this battle left everyone dumbfounded. In the beginning, Nietian could not fight back at all. Now, Nietian had completely dominated a 9 tribulation mystic venerable. It was like a dream. Nietian was really heaven-defying and valiant. 9 tribulation mystic venerable. What else do you have to say? High above in the sky, Nietian shouted loudly with a forceful voice that surged like a judgment from the 9 heavens. At that moment, the 9 tribulations mystic venerable's 10,000 tribulations sacred body had been destroyed, and he was completely powerless to fight. He was like a little lamb that could be slaughtered by Nietian. His figure was tiny. Under the celestial evolution sacred body, he was like a broken leaf in a storm. He would be torn to shreds at any moment. This Xian venerable, the 9 tribulation Xian venerable's eyes trembled. His face was deathly pale and ugly. No matter what, he had never imagined that this battle would come to this. He had controlled everything about Kuyo Onaguchi, but he had never expected that in the end, he would be controlled by Nietian instead. It could be said that Kuyo Onaguchi's counterattack at the last moment led to the 9 tribulations mystic venerate's failure. If Nietian could not obtain that half of the celestial evolution sacred soul, he would not have the power to resist a 9 tribulation mystic venerable. From a 9 tribulation mystic venerable's point of view, this defeat was completely an accident. He refused to accept it verbally and was unwilling to accept it in his heart. If he was given another chance, he would definitely not let the accident of Nietian expand. Unfortunately, Nietian would not give him the chance. Since you have nothing to say, then die. At this time, Nietian's eyes turned cold as his murderous intent was unleashed. It was so sharp that it felt like it was going to tear the space apart. Boom! The next moment, Nietian made his move and slammed his palm down furiously. The terrifying and boundless palm force condensed into a huge palm shadow that blasted toward the 9 tribulations Xian venerable. The 9 tribulations mystic venerable had lost his 10,000 tribulations sacred body, so he had no way of fighting back against the celestial evolution sacred body's palm. If this palm landed, he would definitely die. However, at the moment of life and death, a strange scene appeared. Buzz! In the air, the cry of a sword rang out. A force that could pierce through the clouds and shatter rocks reverberated in the air. After that, a sword shadow appeared and streaked across the sky, directly absorbing the gigantic palm. It was a horrifying scene. It was as if space had suddenly split open and swallowed the deadly palm shadow. MHM. This sudden scene caused Nietian's eyes to narrow with his face changing. He sensed a very familiar aura from the sword shadow, which made him feel very uneasy. This technique, the person is... In the next moment, Nietian's eyes trembled as he uttered a name, Heavenly Evil Monarch. Heavenly Evil Monarch. This name wasn't unfamiliar to Nietian. Back when he was in the abandoned land, the Heavenly Evil Monarch had appeared twice to capture June Ouching. From a Heavenly Evil Monarch, Nietian found out that June Ouching's true identity was the Netherworld Empire's princess, and she's also the only survivor of the Netherworld family. Back then, if it wasn't for Nietian absorbing the Dragon Emperor's power, he wouldn't be able to force the Heavenly Evil Monarch to retreat. He never expected that the Heavenly Evil Monarch would appear at this moment. 9 Heavens Evil Monarch. At the same time, the 9 tribulation sovereign's eyes trembled as he raised his head into the sky, with joy flickering in his eyes. Nietian's gaze sank as he looked over as well. High up in the sky, a figure stood tall with a vigorous aura. His eyes were filled with a powerful, domineering, and sharp intent. Just by standing there, this silhouette caused space to tremble. It was like a gigantic sword that was piercing through the sky. That silhouette was extremely familiar. It was the Heavenly Evil Monarch. Heavenly Evil Monarch, it's really you. When Nietian saw the Heavenly Evil Monarch's face, his eyes trembled as killing intent gushed out from his body. The Nine Tribulations Sovereign addressed the heavenly evil monarch as the Nine Heavens evil monarch, which meant that the two of them knew each other, and their relationship wasn't ordinary. Nyetian, I never expected that we would meet here. The heavenly evil monarch's eyes trembled as he spoke with unconcealable shock in his eyes. He couldn't believe that Nyetian had grown to such a terrifying height. Back in the land of abandonment, Nyetian was just an ant. But right now, Nyetian's strength wasn't any weaker than him. I also never expected that you would come to the sacred soul domain. The corners of Nyetian's mouth curled up into a cold arc. His voice was filled with killing intent as he said in a deep voice, "Since you've come, then stay." Sensing Nyetian's killing intent, the heavenly evil monarch's eyes trembled as he exclaimed, "Amazing." At this moment, the aura that Nyetian had displayed far exceeded his own and posed a great threat to the heavenly evil monarch. "Nyetian, do you really want to fight with me?" Shortly after, the heavenly evil monarch calmed down and said, "Don't you want to know who I am? Does the identity of someone who's about to die still hold any meaning to me?" As Nyetian laughed, his aura surged as if he wanted to annihilate the heavens and earth. Arrogant. The heavenly evil monarch's eyes sank as he flew into a rage. His sword aura surged and soared into the sky. He was the ninth heaven's evil lord. So when had he ever suffered such contempt? The ninth heaven's evil lord was the heavenly evil monarch's true identity. The Nine Tribulations Sovereign and the ninth heaven's evil lord were both from the Nine Mystic Sect, and they were also part of the Nine Mystic Sect's 5 sovereigns. The heavenly evil monarch came to the sacred soul domain at the same time as the Nine Tribulations Sovereign to check on the Emperor Tablet. There was a huge secret hidden in the Emperor Tablet, which forced the Nine Mystic Sect to dispatch 2 sovereigns. However, when the heavenly evil monarch arrived in the sacred soul domain, he sensed a familiar aura. Hence, he went to take a look, which delayed him. If he came a little later, he would be looking at the Nine Tribulations Sovereign's corpse. At this moment, the Nine Tribulations Sovereign had already retreated to the side and hollered at the heavenly evil monarch, "Evil Lord, don't bother talking to him. Kill him." The heavenly evil monarch's eyes trembled with an unsightly expression. He naturally wanted to kill Nyetian, but he might not be able to fight against Nyetian's powerful aura. "You want to kill me? Bring it on." Nyetian let out a low roar. His aura was incomparably arrogant. His heaven evolution holy body took a step forward in the void. Suddenly, the space shook violently as if it was about to collapse. Chapter 3299. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Up in the sky, dark clouds surged with a terrifying power. The fist form from the heavenly evolution sacred energy had shattered space, turning the heavens and earth into chaos. How did this brat become so powerful? The heavenly evil monarch's eyes trembled when he felt the pressure. He exclaimed in his heart before the evil god sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed it forth. Instantly, countless swords whistled out, akin to a myriad of demons dancing. Rumble. In the next moment, the 2 terrifying forces clashed, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Space within a few myriad meters started to tremble as if it was on the verge of collapsing. At this moment, Nyetian took a step forth, and his heavenly evolution sacred energy soared into the sky, unleashing a violent energy that seemed like it wanted to annihilate everything. Sizzle, 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 sizzle. The swords in the sky started to crumble, since they couldn't bear the impact of the heavenly evolution sacred energy. Bang! In the next moment, a muffled explosion resounded and a bloodied silhouette was blown out. It was the heavenly evil monarch. Even if the heavenly evil monarch's sword intent was sharp and he was a transcendent profound, he still couldn't bear the might of the heavenly evolution sacred energy. Evil monarch. When the Nine Tribulations Sovereign saw this scene, his eyes trembled as he exclaimed. He never expected that the mighty Nine Heavens evil monarch would be blown away by a single punch from Nyetian. What power! Everyone was dumbfounded at this scene, with someone exclaiming. Nyetian's current strength was too terrifying, and it had exceeded everyone's understanding. Some even suspected that Nyetian had the strength to destroy a realm. They had to admit that if Nyetian released his heavenly evolution sacred physique along with the dragon aura, he could instantly cause a large-scale collapse of time and space that could destroy a small realm. Heavenly evil monarch, this is your strength? Up in the sky, Nyetian took a step forth. He was akin to the ruler of the heavens and earth, with a monarch's aura permeating between the heavens and earth. His eyes were cold as he looked at the heavenly evil monarch. 9 heavens, evil monarch? What a mess. In the next moment, Niet Tianling let out a laugh, and the aura around his body actually increased once again. The violent whistling power surged out, as if this world could no longer contain him. Damn it! The heavenly evil monarch stabilized his figure with his eyes trembling. He seemed to be pondering about something. Kill! However, at this moment, Nyetian's punch came directly towards him. The shadow of the punch was like a mountain, and it was surrounded by terrifying heavenly evolution saint energy. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, the wind and clouds were roaring. Heaven and earth were roaring. It was terrifying to the extreme. Nyetian, you forced me to do this. The heavenly evil monarch's eyes trembled as the corner of his lips twitched with killing intent flickering in his eyes. Shortly after, his body trembled and a terrifying aura enveloped him, causing his sword intent to soar. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. The heavenly evil monarch's sword intent soared, and the aura around him was extremely terrifying. It seemed to be above all swordsmen, and it was filled with a powerful bloodline aura. Heavenly evil profound veins. The Ghost Emperor's eyes flickered as he exclaimed, "This guy has the heavenly demonic meridians inside his body." The heavenly evil profound vein was the strongest trump card of the heavenly evil monarch. Any one of the 9 mystical sects, 5 supremes, was a cultivator who had reached the limits of a domain. Every one of them had their own trump cards. The 9 tribulation sovereigns' trump card was the myriad tribulation saint's soul, while the heavenly evil monarch's trump card was the heavenly evil profound veins. A long time ago, the Forsaken Land was ruled by the heavenly evil clan and the Netherworld clan. The reason why these 2 clans were able to rule the Forsaken Land was because of their powerful bloodline power. The heavenly evil family's bloodline power was the heavenly evil profound veins, while the Netherworld family's bloodline power was the Netherworld ghost veins. Back then, when Nyetian was in the land of abandonment, the heavenly evil monarch wanted to take June ouching away for the Nether ghost bloodline. The heavenly evil profound veins and the Netherworld ghost veins were equally famous. They were both extremely powerful bloodline powers. For the heavenly evil monarch to use the heavenly evil profound veins, that meant that he was determined to kill Nyetian. Nyetian, you should be honored to die under the heavenly evil profound veins. In the sky, the heavenly evil monarch roared and unleashed his sword. The power of his heavenly evil Xian bloodline burst out, pushing his sword intent to the limits. Instantly, boundless sword intent condensed into a sword in the sky that looked as if it could tear through and kill everything. You want to kill me? What a joke. However, Nyetian wasn't afraid. His roar rumbled like thunder as boundless starlight energy surged from his body, causing his aura to soar once again. This time, even the Ghost Emperor was shocked. His mouth was agape, shocked to the point where he couldn't say anything. Nyetian had just fused with the Sky Evolution Saint Soul, but he could perfectly fuse his starlight energy with the Sky Evolution Saint energy. His comprehension and understanding of power were simply heaven-defying. Boom! In the next moment, Nyetian threw a jab forth, and the power of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul burst out, causing space to roar. It was as if a myriad of demons were dancing as boundless power shot towards the heavenly evil monarch. Rumble! Then, the sword shadow and the fist shadow collided, causing the void to tremble unceasingly. Space-time cracks appeared, and space-time storms surged out like wild snakes, causing the surroundings to become even more chaotic. Sizzle, 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 sizzle. Ear-piercing noises resounded as the two forces clashed. Rumble. However, at that moment, the fish shadow that was formed from the fusion of the heavenly evolution sacred force and the star force suddenly shook, and a destructive force was released. It was like a volcano that had erupted. The space within 10,000 meters shook violently and shattered into pieces. Boom! In the next moment, the heavenly evil monarch felt a terrifying suppression that rumbled as if it wanted to tear his body apart. Bang! Shortly after, the heavenly evil monarch couldn't hold on any longer, and his silhouette flew out, leaving a trail of blood in the sky. In a direct confrontation, the heavenly evil monarch still couldn't defeat Nietion. How terrifying! The crowd was shocked by the bloody scene in front of them, and they cried out in shock. Their gazes locked onto Nietion, unable to conceal the fear in their hearts. At this moment, they realized how foolish they were to choose to be Nietion's enemy. That fellow, how... The Nine Tribulation Sovereign was shocked the most as his eyes trembled. He was speechless. The Nine Heavens Evil Sovereign, who had used the heavenly evil profound vein, was actually heavily injured by Nietion's fist. Was this scene real? At this moment, the Nine Tribulation Sovereign could sense that Nietion's aura was stronger than before. It's as if there's no limit to Nietion's martial physique, and his strength was constantly soaring. Nietion, you... The heavenly evil monarch looked at Nietion with his eyes trembling. However, he didn't know what to say. His eyes were bloodshot. He was unwilling, and in disbelief. He was the Nine Heavens Evil Sovereign, so how could he be defeated by Nietion? Furthermore, he was defeated in a single move. Heavenly Evil Monarch, your path ends here, Nietion coldly said with killing intent flickering in his eyes. At the same time, he took a step forth with killing intent surging. Nietion, you better think of someone else before you kill me. The heavenly evil monarch's gaze sank as he sneered. Nietion's eyes squinted as he had an uneasy premonition. Flawless netherworld. The heavenly evil monarch's gaze turned netherworld as he coldly uttered a name. Jun Ouching. Hearing this name, Nietion's pupils suddenly shrank, and his face changed as he trembled. Chapter 3300. Flawless netherworld. Flawless netherworld. Jun Ouching. Hearing the heavenly evil monarch's name, Nietion squinted his eyes and his face froze. For the heavenly evil monarch to mention Jun Ouching's name at this moment, he was clearly threatening Nietion. Could it be that he has already taken control of Jun Ouching? At the thought of this, Nietion's pupils constricted. His eyes were filled with rage, madness, brutality, and killing intent. Nietion, you don't want the flawless netherworld to die, right? The heavenly evil monarch coldly said as he looked at Nietion. A cold intent rose on the corner of his lips. Where's Jun Ouching? Nietion's eyes were filled with an incomparably cold, killing intent as he spoke coldly. Each and every word he uttered was filled with terrifying, killing intent. Don't be anxious. The Netherworld Princess will soon appear. The heavenly evil monarch sneered with a peculiar smile on his lips. Right now, I need you to do something for me. Speak. Nietion's face was so dark that it was practically dripping blood as he squeezed those words out of his teeth. For the heavenly evil monarch to be so fearless, he naturally had something to rely on. Nietion had no idea if Jun Ouching was really under the heavenly evil monarch's control, but he could only assume that Jun Ouching was under the heavenly evil monarch's control. After all, he couldn't risk Jun Ouching's life. Shatter the unhindered Emperor tablet. The heavenly evil monarch's lips twitched as he swept his gaze over the unhindered Emperor tablet, with a blazing radiance flickering in his eyes. The unhindered Emperor tablet was the reason why he and the Nine Tribulation Sovereign came here. Although the unhindered Emperor tablet did not seal the Gue Gudian, it hid another huge secret. The Nine Tribulation Sovereign did not use Kuyo Anaguchi to open the unhindered heavenly seal for fun, but he had his own motive. Nietion frowned and looked at the Emperor's steel. He did not make a move immediately. Instead, he used his divine sense to sense the aura within the Emperor's steel. Without the protection of the vertical sky seal, the horizontal Emperor tablet stood tall in the sky like a mountain, suppressing the void with a majestic aura. Nie Tian's divine sense entered the interior of the unhindered Emperor's steel, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble in fear. He discovered that the Emperor's steel was covered in runes that looked like some kind of runes. Moreover, these runes were very orderly. They were actually distributed according to some kind of array pattern. Could it be that there's a formation hidden within the Emperor's steel? Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. Nie Tian. At that moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded. His eyes trembled uncontrollably, as if he had discovered something incredible. What's wrong? Nie Tian asked in surprise. What can you sense if you follow the direction of all the runes? The Ghost Emperor's gaze flickered with a blazing radiance. He did not reply to Nie Tian, but asked in joy. Knitting his brows, Nie Tian immediately activated his demonic eye and sent his power into the complicated runes on the Emperor's steel, following the direction of the runes. This is... A brief moment later, Nie Tian sensed something and his face changed. He was so shocked that he was speechless. He realized that the location where all the runes converged was actually a black coffin. That's right, it's a coffin. There was actually a coffin hidden in the Emperor's steel. Such a discovery was too shocking for Nie Tian. Could it be that there's an unspeakable secret hidden within the coffin? Nie Tian, do it. Seeing that Nie Tian wasn't making a move, the heavenly evil monarch couldn't help getting impatient and spoke out in a cold tone. What's the rush? Turning around, Nie Tian's aura gushed out and swept out in the sky, which caused the heavenly evil monarch to retreat 10-odd meters. Nie Tian, do you really want the Netherworld princess to die? The heavenly evil monarch asked with a cold expression as he stabilized his silhouette. If I see June ouching, I will naturally make a move. Nie Tian replied with a grim gaze. Evidently, there's a huge secret hidden within the Emperor's steel. For the mysterious 9 profound sect to send out 2 sovereigns, one could tell how huge this secret was. Right now, the 9 tribulation sovereign and heavenly evil monarch were heavily injured by Nie Tian, and their only trump card was June ouching. If June ouching didn't appear, then it's impossible for Nie Tian to make a move. All right, after a brief pondering, the heavenly evil monarch continued. You will be able to see the Netherworld princess soon. But before that, it's best for you to think about how to break the Emperor's steel. If anything happens to June ouching, the 2 of you will die. Nie Tian's gaze was akin to a sharp blade as he looked at the heavenly evil monarch and 9 tribulation sovereign. The heavenly evil monarch and the 9 tribulation sovereigns' faces changed at the same time. The 2 sovereigns of the 9 profound sect were actually threatened by a young cultivator, and their faces had been thrown into their mother's womb. Furthermore, the 2 of them could tell that Nie Tian's words weren't just a threat. If anything happened to June ouching, then Nie Tian would really kill them. Thereafter, Nie Tian took a deep breath and calmed himself down as he started to sense the Emperor's steel. Everyone watched from afar, but they had no idea what was going on. They were extremely nervous and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Nie Fenghua and Desolate Ghost also did not approach. They could no longer help Nie Tian, but at the same time, they couldn't become Nie Tian's burden. A brief moment later, the Ghost Emperor's voice resounded. Nie Tian, there's indeed a hidden array within the Emperor's steel. If you had acted rashly earlier, you might have been killed by the array. So it turned out that there really was an array within the Emperor's steel, and it was a sane array that was filled with killing intent. If Nie Tian had made a move earlier, then he would have been instantly killed by the array. Evidently, the heavenly evil monarch had plotted against Nie Tian and wanted to use the Emperor's steel to kill Nie Tian. Fortunately, Nie Tian was cautious. This formation isn't too complicated, but its power is very strong. The material of the Emperor's steel isn't an ordinary stone, and someone actually managed to infuse runes into the Emperor's steel to create such an array. That person's attainments in arrays can be said to be unparalleled. The Ghost Emperor said as he sensed the Emperor's steel. He was a grandmaster in arrays, and he had once refined his body into an array. His attainments in arrays were even above the fat cat's. But at this moment, he actually gave such a high evaluation of the array within the Emperor's steel. That meant that the array within the Emperor's steel wasn't simple. Nodding his head, Nyetian fell into silence. The Emperor's steel was extremely sturdy, and it didn't shatter after infusing runes into it. Furthermore, it could even link such complicated runes together to form an array. That person's ability was truly extraordinary. Even the Ghost Emperor might not be able to achieve this. Such an intricate design proved that the coffin within the Emperor's steel was hiding a huge secret. Nyetian took a deep breath and asked in a grim voice, "Ghost Emperor, can you find the location of the spell formation's eye?" "Yeah." The Ghost Emperor nodded his head. "I will need some time, but won't take long." After that, the Ghost Emperor no longer spoke and focused on breaking the array. "Master." At this moment, a voice resounded and a black-clothed silhouette appeared. "MHM?" Nyetian narrowed his eyes and quickly turned around. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw a black-clad cultivator with a powerful aura and a ferocious look in his eyes. Chapter 33:01. Don't go back on your words. Jun Ouching. When Nyetian saw the familiar face in the sky, his eyes trembled as he yelled out the other party's name. Jun Ouching really appeared. Back when Nyetian had left the land of the abandoned, Jun Ouching had left with him, and the two of them had come to the Holy Soul Academy together. But at that time, Nyetian had enemies all around him. To ensure Jun Ouching's safety, Nyetian got her to become the disciple of one of the Saint Soul's 3 elders, Granny Tang. After that, Nyetian never saw Jun Ouching again. He never expected that when the two of them met again, Jun Ouching would be under someone's control. Nyetian. As soon as Jun Ouching saw Nyetian, her beautiful eyes slightly shrank. Her body trembled as tears gushed out of her eyes and flowed down her cheeks. When Nyetian saw this scene, he felt as if his heart was being stabbed with a knife. His blood was surging, and he was on the verge of losing control of his anger. He failed to protect Jun Ouching and caused her to suffer. At this moment, he felt as if his heart was being torn apart. "It's you." At this moment, the black-clothed cultivator beside Jun Ouching recognized Nyetian and yelled out, "Nyetian." This black-clothed cultivator actually knew Nyetian. 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley. Nyetian abruptly raised his head with killing intent flickering in his eyes. He fixed his gaze on the black-clothed cultivator and yelled out the latter's name. This black-clothed cultivator was the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley. Back in the abandoned land, the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley were the first to appear from the heavenly evil family. They had fought with Jun Ouching's grandfather, Jun Chujian, but they were defeated by Jun Chujian. After that, the heavenly evil Shaoqian and heavenly evil Monarch appeared. To think that the 7 disasters of the Ghost Valley would appear once again. The heavenly evil Monarch came to the Sacred Soul Domain with the 9 Tribulation Profound Sovereign, but the reason why he took so long was to look for Jun Ouching. When he first entered the Sacred Soul region, he sensed the aura of Jun Ouching's netherworld ghost meridian. The heavenly evil family and the netherworld family shared the same origin. There was a strong resonance between the heavenly evil profound veins and the netherworld ghost veins. Because of this, he wanted to obtain Jun Ouching's netherworld ghost meridian. The heavenly evil Xian veins and the nether ghost veins were 2 great connate martial veins. Both were born from heaven and earth, and they could fuse with each other. The heavenly evil Monarch wanted to plunder Jun Ouching's nether ghost bloodline and fuse it with his to create a stronger Xiantian martial meridian. It was so much so that even Jun Chujian's destruction of the Netherworld Empire was planned by the heavenly evil Monarch. For the Netherworld bloodline, the heavenly evil Monarch was willing to pay any price. However, Nyetian's appearance in the land of abandonment had disrupted the heavenly evil Monarch's plan. If it wasn't for Nyetian, the heavenly evil Monarch would have already obtained the Netherworld Ghost Meridian. After the heavenly evil monarch determined Jun Ouching's location, he initially wanted to make a move himself. However, he was worried that something might happen to the 9 Tribulation Shin sovereign, so he handed it over to the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley. The 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley did not disappoint him and managed to capture Jun Ouching. Your strength, how? At this moment, the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley looked at Nietian. When they sensed the latter's strength, their eyes trembled as they opened their mouths in shock. However, they lost their voices twice. They couldn't believe their eyes. Nietian's strength has actually reached the 8th Order Pseudo-Sage realm. It was so much so that the aura that Nietian was displaying wasn't any weaker than the heavenly evil monarch. How is that possible? Back in a land of abandonment, Nietian was just an ant. How long had it been? Only a few years had passed, yet Nietian had grown to such a terrifying level. His talent was freakish to the extreme. A few years was just a blink of an eye for a deity realm cultivator. However, Nietian had undergone a complete transformation, which was too shocking. Just what did Nietian experience for his strength to grow to such a height? Are you shocked? Nietian's gaze was cold as he looked at the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley. Cold. The killing intent in his gaze made the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley feel suffocated. It was so much so that they even felt their bones trembling. Right now, Nietian had grown to a height that even the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley could only look up to. Nietian, it's time for you to make a move. At this moment, the heavenly evil monarch spoke out with a cold light flickering in his eyes. When he looked at the Emperor tablet, his eyes flickered with a blazing radiance. Heavenly evil monarch, if you dare to harm Jun Ouching, I will annihilate the entire heavenly evil family. Nietian abruptly turned around with his gaze fixed on the heavenly evil monarch and threatened. Sensing Nietian's killing intent, the heavenly evil monarch's gaze trembled as he said, "As long as you destroy the Emperor tablet, I will definitely not harm the Netherworld princess. You better not go back on your word." Nietian replied coldly. He then fixed his gaze on the Emperor tablet. "As long as you can do it, I will definitely not go back on my words." The heavenly evil monarch coldly smiled. In his heart, he was thinking that it's impossible for Nietian to do it. There was a powerful formation in the Emperor's steel. If one couldn't find the eye of the formation, even a Sage Realm warrior might not be able to break the Emperor's steel. The reason why he wanted Nietian to make a move on the Emperor tablet was to use it to kill Nietian. Looking at the Emperor tablet, Nietian sensed the runes on it with a sharp light flickering in his eyes. He knew what the heavenly evil monarch was thinking about. But how could he, Nietian, be killed by an Emperor tablet? Nietian, it's done. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice resounded and a diagram of an array appeared in Nietian's mind. Nietian nodded and focused his soul awareness on the spell formation structure. It wasn't a complicated array, but he could see that all the runes were gathered at the center, which was the core of the array, the core of the array. Apart from that, there were also 9 large formation inscriptions that gathered around the eye of the formation, like stars surrounding the moon. Nietian, do you see those 9 secondary cores? Then the Ghost Emperor said, these 9 secondary formation cores exist to protect the formation core. Destroy the 9 secondary formation cores first, then attack the real formation core. All right. Nietian heavily nodded his head with a blaze flickering in his eyes. At this moment, he naturally wouldn't act rashly. He had to listen to the Ghost Emperor's explanation. This array wasn't complicated, and the 9 secondary cores were easy to find. But if he was in a hurry and made a move on the core, then the person who made a move would be instantly reduced to ashes. Taking a deep breath, Nietian was prepared to make a move. Boom! He once again activated the Sky Evolution Holy Body, and his aura surged wildly. All the power gathered on his palm, and then he clenched it into a fist and punched out. The huge fist shadow was like a giant beast, roaring and rushing towards the Imperial Tablet. Chapter 3302 Ghost Valley's Emperor's Coffin. The array in the Emperor Tablet was a Saint Great Array that was filled with killing intent. The moment it was triggered, even a Sage Realm cultivator would be instantly killed. In the Heavenly Evil Monarch's view, it's impossible for Nietian to know about the Emperor Tablet's array. Furthermore, even if Nietian knew about it, it's impossible for him to resolve the array in such a short period of time, unless Nietian was a Saint-Grade Array Grandmaster. Nietian might not be a Saint-Grade Array Grandmaster, but he had such an existence beside him. Perhaps the Heavenly Evil Monarch would be filled with endless disappointment when he punched out. That guy actually made a move on the Emperor's steel. In the distance, the eyes of the crowd trembled as they looked at Nietian. No one knew what was going to happen next. Rumble. Boom. In the air, the shadow of the fist was like a wild beast. It arrived in an instant and bombarded the gigantic Emperor tablet, causing the entire tablet to tremble. After that, a huge crack appeared on the Emperor tablet. Nietian's fist had actually pierced through the Emperor tablet. Everyone squinted their eyes as they sucked in a cold breath with dumbfounded expressions. Nietian was too powerful, and a single punch from him was so terrifying. The Emperor tablet wasn't made of ordinary materials, since it was 1,000 meters thick. However, it was pierced through by Nietian, which was simply unimaginable. Nietian had already gone through 2 major battles, yet his aura hadn't weakened in the slightest. Everyone couldn't help feeling curious about how much energy Nietian possessed, but no one knew that the most terrifying aspect of the Emperor tablet was the array within it. Although Nietian's fist might seem reckless, it had actually avoided the array's killing intent, preventing the array's power from being triggered. MHM? The Heavenly Evil Monarch exclaimed with his eyes widened. The shock in his heart could be imagined. He never imagined that not only did Nietian's fist fail to trigger the array within the Emperor tablet, it even pierced through it. How is that possible? How could this be? Damn it! In the next moment, the Heavenly Evil Monarch's heart sank before he calmed down and roared in his heart. He must be lucky. He must be lucky. But even the Heavenly Evil Monarch himself did not believe in such a guess. The horizontal Imperial steel was huge, comparable to a mountain. Nietian was actually able to accurately find the weakness of the Imperial steel. Was this really luck? Heavenly Evil Monarch, have I disappointed you? Nietian suddenly turned around with disdain in his eyes as he looked at the Heavenly Evil Monarch with a sneer. Disappointed? The Heavenly Evil Monarch's face froze before he smiled. Nietian, how can I be disappointed that you managed to destroy the Emperor tablet? At this moment, he was certain that Nietian was not lucky at all. He had seen through the array of the Imperial steel. But why was that? Nietian was clearly so young. It was impossible for him to have such a high attainment in array formations. The Tao of arrays was even more complicated than the martial Tao. Even a genius in the Tao of arrays would have to wait a few tens of thousands of years before they could have any achievements. Furthermore, the array in the Emperor tablet was a Saint array, so how could Nietian see through it? Could it be that there's a hidden expert beside him? The Heavenly Evil Monarch's eyes trembled as he made a guess in his heart. His face instantly turned pale with beads of sweat covering his forehead. How terrifying was someone that could see through the Saint array in such a short period of time. Evil Lord, calm down. At this moment, the 9 Tribulation Sovereign came to the Heavenly Evil Monarch's side and said, since we can study the Emperor tablet and know about the array, that means that Brat can as well. The 9 Tribulation Sovereign had also seen through it, and was certain that Nietian knew about the Emperor tablet's array. The Heavenly Evil Monarch and the rest had long known about the array, so they weren't afraid. Their original plan was to kill Nietian with the Emperor Steel formation, then break the formation and take out the items inside. However, Nietian was a surprise that they hadn't expected. That's right. That must be it. That Brat is the same as us, and he has long known about the array. The Heavenly Evil Monarch reminded as he confirmed his guess. After all, Nietian was from the Saint Soul Academy, and he had many secrets to begin with. Heavenly Evil Monarch, watch carefully as I destroy the Emperor tablet. At this moment, Nietian sneered and continued to attack. He punched out again and again, and with every punch, a huge crack would appear on the Emperor's steel. In the blink of an eye, the 9 subsidiary array cores were destroyed by Nietion. 9 cave-like things appeared on the horizontal and horizontal Imperial steel. Furthermore, they were arranged in a very orderly manner. They were connected together and formed a huge ring. At the center of the ring, the Emperor Tablet's array core was located. Everyone was dumbfounded as they widened their mouths, but they couldn't make sound. At this moment, Nietion had become an unfathomable existence in their eyes. The 9 tribulation sovereign and heavenly evil monarch were dumbfounded as the shock in their hearts couldn't be described. Even if the 2 of them made a move, they wouldn't be as decisive as Nietion. Next, shatter the Emperor Tablet. Nietion swept a glance at the 9 tribulation sovereign and heavenly evil monarch with a cold smile. Boom! Shortly after, his aura soared into the sky, and his celestial evolution, Saint Physique, grew by quite a bit, causing space to tremble as if it was being torn apart. Next, Nietion gathered all of his strength in his arm and punched out. In the direction of his fist, a fist shadow pounced forward like an ancient wild beast, ripping the surrounding space and causing it to shake violently. Boom! In the next moment, the shadow of the fist descended with a bang and bombarded the core of the formation. A muffled explosion resounded in the air, and the shadow of the fist actually collapsed in an instant, transforming into numerous violent waves that raged through the space. Everyone's eyes trembled as they tensed up. The 9 tribulation sovereign and heavenly evil monarch's eyes trembled with excitement. That's because the thing in the Emperor Tablet was about to be born. Crack! At that moment, the huge Emperor steel suddenly cracked. A crack appeared on the eye of the formation. Then it cracked like a spider web and instantly spread to the entire Emperor steel. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks covered the entire Emperor steel. They were formed by the collapse of the formation patterns. Break! Nietion squinted his eyes, and his celestial evolution, Saint Physique, disappeared. He then took a step forth, and a sword whistled out, slamming against the Emperor Tablet. Rumble! Bam, bam, bam! The Emperor's steel shook for a moment before it crumbled. Huge rocks flew out and fell to the ground. Nietion's eyes suddenly lit up. Through the flying rubble, he saw a huge black coffin floating high in the sky, emanating a terrifying aura that filled the entire heaven and earth with a creepy, gruesome aura. Chapter 3303. Bloodline Restriction. The Ghost Valley's Emperor's Coffin. The 9 tribulations sovereign and heavenly evil monarch looked at the black coffin floating in the sky with their faces changing, and they exclaimed. The secret that they had been waiting for was the Ghost Valley's Emperor's Coffin. There was a shocking item hidden in the Ghost Valley's Emperor's Coffin. The Ghost Valley's Emperor's Coffin. When Nietion heard the 9 tribulations sovereign and heavenly evil monarch's voices, he squinted his eyes and flew towards the coffin. Don't get close. But at this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice resounded in panic. Hovering in midair, Nietion's expression flickered as he came to a stop. Rustle. The moment he came to a stop, the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin suddenly trembled. Then, a streak of blood-colored light shot out of the coffin. It was so sharp that it tore a space-time rift in the air and shot towards Nietion. Nietion exclaimed in surprise as he felt a suffocating chill assaulting his face. At this moment, he felt the threat of death. That unremarkable crimson luster actually possessed the ability to kill him. In the blink of an eye, Nietion reacted and tilted his body slightly. The blood-colored light brushed past his chest, leaving a deep wound on his chest. Blood gushed out of the wound and instantly dyed his lower body red. Nietion squinted his eyes as he looked at the wound on his chest with an unsightly expression. There was a black aura coming from the wound, and it showed no signs of healing. Damn it! Nietion roared as he endured the pain and forcefully unleashed the Terra Vein's origin. A brief moment later, the wound started to heal. But at this moment, Nietion's face was as pale as paper. What a close call! Looking at the wound on his chest, He let out a long breath with lingering fear in his heart. If it wasn't for the Ghost Emperor's reminder, he would have definitely been killed by the crimson luster. That blood-colored light was extremely sharp. If he was hit by it head-on, he would definitely be killed instantly. Nietion's impulsiveness almost cost him his life. He did not expect that after the Ghost Valley Emperor coffin was unsealed, there would still be such a terrifying killing intent. The crowd stared at Nietion in shock for a long time. Then, a look of disappointment appeared on their faces, as if they were regretful that Nietion wasn't killed by the blood-colored light. Today, the strength that Nietion had displayed was too shocking. Everyone felt that he shouldn't exist, that he shouldn't live. The Nine Tribulation Mystic Sovereign and the Heavenly Evil Monarch even looked regretful. They didn't know how Nietion had sensed the danger at the last moment. Nietion stabilized his body and looked at the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin with a gloomy gaze. His face could not help but change. He saw a layer of blood-red runes flowing outside the Emperor's coffin. Its aura was cold and dark, and it was extremely powerful. Earlier, the blood-colored light was formed by those blood-red runes, and it nearly took Nietion's life. It's a bloodline restriction. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice resounded. So the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin has a powerful bloodline restriction that forbids others from approaching. Only those from the Ghost Valley clan can approach. MHM? Nietion's gaze sank as he understood what was going on. The bloodline restriction outside the Emperor's coffin was to prevent outsiders from approaching the Emperor's coffin. Evidently, the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin was left behind by an expert of the Ghost Valley clan for the descendants of the Ghost Valley clan. Those two celestial evolution saint souls should be left behind by an ancestor of the Ghost Valley clan. The Ghost Emperor's face sank as he continued. If I'm not wrong, the one lying in the coffin should be an ancestor of the Ghost Valley clan. Hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nietion's eyes couldn't help but turn cold. He couldn't hide the shock on his face as he asked, could it be that the body of the Ghost Valley clan's ancestor is lying in the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin? It's very possible. The Ghost Emperor's eyes trembled, and he said heavily, "This." Nietion's face stiffened, and he was speechless. The ancestor of the Ghost Valley clan should be a powerful existence. Since he was able to set up the traversing heavenly seal and the formation in the Emperor's steel, it undoubtedly meant that the ancestor of the Ghost Valley clan was definitely a peak existence in the Sage realm. In other words, the corpse of a saint was lying in the coffin of the Ghost Valley Emperor. The corpse of a sage was a very precious thing. Thinking about it, the bones of those saints that have fallen for countless years could cause a crazy fight between warriors. How precious would a complete corpse of a saint be? It was no exaggeration to say that if the news of the corpse of a saint were to spread, it would set off a shocking wave in the myriad domain. The power contained in the corpse of a saint was related to the sage realm, and it was something that everyone in the myriad domain yearned for. It was no wonder why the Nine Profound sect would send out 2 sovereigns for the Emperor's steel. 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley snatched the Emperor's coffin. At this moment, the Heavenly Evil Monarch suddenly looked at the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley and roared. Roger! The 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley's eyes trembled as they tossed June, ouching, towards the Heavenly Evil Monarch before their silhouettes moved. They were like streaks of light as they flew towards the Emperor's coffin. Dream on! Nietion's face sank as he shouted in a low voice. Sword intent erupted from his entire body, and it was fierce and murderous like a tsunami as it charged towards the sky. At this moment, he finally understood why the Heavenly Evil Monarch brought the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley to the Sacred Soul domain. So it turned out that it was to open the Emperor's coffin. There was a powerful bloodline restriction around the Emperor's coffin, and aside from the Ghost Valley clan, no one could approach it. Evidently, the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley were cultivators of the Ghost Valley clan. But with Nietion here, how could he allow the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley to approach the Emperor's coffin? Saint Heaven-defying sword, sun-defying sword. In the next moment, Nietion let out a bellow and slashed out with the star heavenly slash. Sword shadows whizzed through the air like dragons, carrying torrential killing intent. They sealed off a part of the void and charged madly towards the 7 calamities of the Ghost Vale. The 7 disasters of the Ghost Valley suddenly felt an immense pressure pressing down on them, causing their expressions to change. They immediately unsheathed their long swords and slashed towards the incoming pressure. Rumble. In the next moment, the 2 swords clashed together, causing space to tremble as if it was on the verge of collapsing. Instantly, boundless sword intent swept out. The 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley were forced back a few thousand meters. At this moment, even without the Sky Evolution Saint's soul, Nyetian could easily suppress the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley. How did your sword intent become so powerful? The 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley stabilized their silhouettes, and their faces changed as they looked at Nyetian with fear in their eyes. They never expected that Nyetian's sword intent would be so terrifying. It wasn't any weaker than his and was even vaguely suppressing him. At this moment, Nyetian was clearly a transcendent realm swordsman. But how is that possible? Back then, when Nyetian was in the Forsaken Land, his sword Dao was still weak. In just a few years, Nyetian had grown to the transcendent realm. His comprehension of sword Dao was too terrifying. With me around, no one can approach the Emperor's coffin. Nie Tianling smiled as a terrifying sword aura surged from his body. Nie Tian. But at this moment, the heavenly evil monarch's voice resounded. If you don't want the netherworld princess to die, then retreat. Chapter 3304. St. Corp's baleful auraboom. In the void, an invisible force came crashing down, enveloping June Ouching and imprisoning her. The space around her instantly tightened. Ouching! Nie Tian squinted his eyes as he roared. The blood in his body started to boil with rage surging in his body. He felt like he was on the verge of exploding. Nie Tian, retreat. The heavenly evil monarch coldly said with killing intent in his eyes. He slightly increased the strength in his hand, causing June Ouching to feel suffocated. June Ouching's face was covered in sweat. Her face was unsightly, but she did not make a sound. Evidently, she was trying her best to endure. Heavenly evil monarch. As Nie Tian let out an explosive roar, he unleashed an aura that resembled that of a mad, wild, and terrifying beast. The void around him exploded, as if it had been ripped apart by his sword intent. At this moment, Nie Tian was enraged, truly enraged. When the crowd saw this scene, their eyes couldn't help but tremble. The intense fluctuations coming from a void caused their hearts to tremble uncontrollably. At this moment, when they looked at Nie Tian, it was as if he was no longer a human, but a ferocious beast trapped in a cage. This ferocious beast was roaring at this moment, but when it breaks out of the cage, it would definitely unleash a terrifying power. Retreat. Sensing Nie Tian's terrifying aura, the heavenly evil monarch squinted his eyes with fear. But in the next moment, his face sank, and he coldly said. He knew that the more enraged Nie Tian was, the more important June Ouching was in his heart. And the more this was the case, the more it proved that Nie Tian did not dare to risk June Ouching's life. Nie Tian's gaze trembled. Every single drop of blood, bone, and meridians in his body was violently roaring. He wished that he could skin the heavenly evil monarch alive, but he still endured it at this moment. He had to retreat because he really couldn't risk June Ouching's life. The heavenly evil monarch had grasped onto his weakness, forcing him to compromise. Furthermore, the Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin was too important to the heavenly evil monarch. At this moment, Nie Tian's silhouette started to retreat with his gaze fixed on the heavenly evil monarch. He did not dare to relax. If the heavenly evil monarch dared to harm June Ouching, Nie Tian would definitely kill him without any hesitation. The heavenly evil monarch knew how terrifying Nie Tian was. June Ouching was his greatest trump card, and he didn't dare to kill her. At least not now. In the end, he was already afraid of Tian. Move out. The heavenly evil monarch looked at the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley. The 7 calamities sect. The seven calamities of the Ghost Valley agreed. They glanced at Nietian with lingering fear in their hearts. Then, their figures moved and approached the coffin. He arrived in front of the Emperor's coffin, and sure enough, he did not trigger the restrictions killing intent. The seven disasters of the Ghost Valley looked at the coffin nervously. After taking a deep breath, they stretched out their palms. Lines of blood spurted out from their fingers and circulated in the air, releasing a powerful bloodline aura. He wanted to use his own bloodline power to break the bloodline restriction of the Ghost Valley Emperor coffin. Swoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the next second, the seven disasters of the Gigu Valley moved their palms, and rays of blood shot out like arrows towards the Emperor's coffin. Boom! Guegu's bloodline power descended and merged with the bloodline seal outside the coffin. With a loud bang, the blood runes on the coffin gradually dimmed. A moment later, the crimson rune disappeared. The bloodline restriction on the coffin was removed. Master! The Gue Valley's seven calamities turned to look at the heavenly evil monarch with joy. Open it. The heavenly evil monarch's lips twitched as his voice trembled. Yeah. The seven calamities of the Ghost Valley nodded his head and took a step forth. A trace of fanaticism surged in his eyes as he let out a long breath of impure air. Only then did he extend his hand and forcefully open the coffin. Boom! When the coffin was opened, an aura spread out and enveloped the seven calamities of the Ghost Valley. The Saint Corpse's ominous aura. The Ghost Emperor's eyes trembled as he exclaimed, "What a terrifying aura!" Everyone felt the terrifying, ominous aura from over 100,000 meters away. Their faces changed with fear. That aura was too terrifying that it made them feel suffocated. Arg! At this moment, the seven calamities of the Ghost Valley suddenly howled. Their voices were extremely mournful. Evidently, they were suffering immense pain. Nietian squinted his eyes. He could sense that the Sky Evolution Saint's soul in his body had become active, as if it wanted to separate from his body. What's going on? He knitted his brows with shock on his face. It's the Holy Corpse's ominous aura. It's trying to borrow a body to reincarnate. The Ghost Emperor's face darkened as he said cold. Nietian frowned and guarded his mind. The star energy in his body surged and firmly restrained the Sky Evolution Saint soul. After a while, the ominous aura gradually dissipated and the seven calamities of the Ghost Valley were revealed. They had turned into a pile of bones. When the crowd saw this, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Their expressions were extremely shocked. The seven calamities of the Ghost Valley were peak, rank 9 pseudo-holiness cultivators. Yet, they were corroded by the ominous aura in an instant, leaving only a pile of bones. The power of the ominous aura was too terrifying. That was close. The Ghost Emperor heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Fortunately, the person who had fused with the Sky Evolution Saint Soul was Nietian. Otherwise, it would have been terrible. The Sky Evolution Saint Soul had fused with the star energy, and it was difficult to break free. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to restrain the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. Once the Sky Evolution Saint Soul left the cultivator's body and fused with the ominous aura, it could instantly possess the seven calamities of the Ghost Valley. It looked like the old monster in the Emperor's coffin had thought of this and set up a bloodline restriction to allow the Ghost Valley clan to approach the Emperor's coffin and possess them. After all, the same bloodline power was more suitable for the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. But it was a pity that the one who fused with the Sky Evolution Saint Soul was Nietian. The other Sky Evolution Saint Soul was one of the 9 extremities. The 9 Tribulation Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch looked at the pair of bones in the sky with shock on their faces. They were speechless. They never expected that the 7 calamities of the Ghost Valley would die just like that. At this moment, Nietian's silhouette moved as he approached the Emperor's coffin. He wanted to take a look at what was inside the Emperor's coffin. Boom! However, just as he was about to get close to the coffin, a thunderous sound rang out in the sky. After that, a boundless amount of energy appeared, suppressing the void and condensing into a gigantic black palm that emitted a terrifying dark energy, smashing towards him. MHM? Nyation knitted his brows as his face changed. The black palm in the sky was extremely powerful. It was even more terrifying than the 9 Tribulation Sovereign who had activated the ominous sage body. This palm was aimed at Nyation, and it was clearly trying to kill him in one move. At the same time, the 9 Tribulation Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch looked at the palm in the sky. They seemed to have sensed something, and their faces changed at the same time. They were stunned for a brief moment before they yelled out, Emperor Jiuxian, Emperor Jiuxian, the head of the 9 mystic sects, 5 great sovereigns, the supreme existence of the 9 mystic sect. Chapter 3305. Emperor Jiuxian. The 9 Tribulations Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch looked up in the sky and sensed a familiar aura. Their eyes trembled and their hearts were filled with shock. The head of the 9 mystic sects, 5 sovereigns, Emperor Jiuxian, had actually come personally. This was something that the 9 Tribulations Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch never expected, that the corpse of a saint would actually alarm the strongest existence in the 9 mystic sect. Thus, one could tell how precious this corpse was. Boom! High up in the sky, the gigantic palm suddenly descended, causing the void to tremble. Terrifying space-time cracks appeared in the surrounding space. Waves of space-time storms rushed out like wild beasts, wanting to devour and annihilate everything. Nyation's expression suddenly turned grim as he felt a terrifying suppressive force bearing down on him from all directions. Strands of terrifying, ferocious, and violent aura appeared in the air, as if they could annihilate everything in their path. Sky Evolution's sacred body, activate. At the moment of life and death, the corners of Nyation's mouth twitched. He let out a low roar, and the power of the stars erupted. At the same time, boundless heaven evolution sacred energy was released. The world rumbled, and the heaven evolution sacred body appeared once again. It stood tall in the air. You're just an ant, and you want to resist me? At this moment, a deep roar resounded in the sky. It was akin to a clap of thunder, along with a terrifying aura that caused the surrounding space to tremble. In the blink of an eye, the gigantic palm shadow in the sky released a frightening power. Rays of gloomy light blossomed, bursting forth with an unstoppable force. Boom! The surging waves in the void surged in all directions, causing the surrounding crowd to retreat once again. Countless eyes trembled as their expressions turned sluggish. They couldn't imagine that a cultivator could unleash such terrifying power. Rumble! Boom, boom, boom! In the next moment, under the watchful eyes of countless pairs of eyes, the dark shadow of the palm suddenly fell. It was like an endless mountain, falling on the celestial evolution holy body. Suddenly, the void space shook, and the celestial evolution holy body directly collapsed, turning into an endless wild force that raged in the space. Boom! Instantly, Nyation felt a terrifying pressure, as if his body was about to be torn apart. This terrifying power was simply irresistible. Jiuxian supremacy was indeed worthy of being the leader of the 9 mystical sects, 5 great supremacies. Bang! Then, with a muffled sound, a bloody figure flew out, leaving a trail of blood in the air. It was Nyation. At this moment, he was unable to contend head-on with Sovereign Jiuxian. Good chance. At that moment, the 9 Tribulations mystic master's eyes trembled and his killing intent surged. With a low roar, his figure instantly moved. He struck out with his palm and madly attacked Nyation. He sensed that Nyation's aura was still there, which meant that he was not dead. But he was very sure that if he followed up with another palm strike, Nyation would definitely die. Despicable scum. At the same time, a low, murderous voice rang out. Then, a sword shadow appeared in the void. It was vigorous and violent as it headed straight for the 9 Tribulations mystic venerable. The Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable was stunned for a moment. He immediately turned around and saw that the person who attacked was Nie Fenghua. "Aunt, you're courting death." The Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable frowned and changed his target. His entire body's aura surged wildly as he struck out with his palm and attacked Nie Fenghua. Boom! In the void, a muffled explosion rang out. The sword's shadow in the air directly collapsed, and Nie Fenghua's figure was instantly sent flying. Whoosh! At the same time, on the other side, there was a roar in the void. On Nie Tian's back, 1,000-meter-long astral soul wings spread out like clouds in the sky, suppressing the void and stabilizing his figure. "Father!" When he saw Nie Fenghua's figure flying backward from the impact, his eyes trembled and he cried out in fear. Just as Nie Fenghua's figure was about to fall to the ground, a figure whizzed by and caught him firmly. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as his figure flew over and landed beside Boundless Ghost. The person who caught Nie Fenghua just now was precisely Boundless Ghost Desolate. "Father!" When Nie Tian saw that Nie Fenghua was unconscious and his aura was weak, he could not help but tremble. His face was so gloomy that it looked like it was about to drip blood. It was extremely terrifying. That moment just now was indeed a moment of life and death. If Nie Fenghua had not stopped the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable, Nie Tian's fate would have been certain death. Now, Nie Tian had taken a direct hit from the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable. He was severely injured and his face was as white as a sheet. However, compared to him, Nie Fenghua's situation was even more serious. Without hesitation, Nie Tian forcibly released the power of the Terra Vein Source and channeled it into Nie Fenghua's body. However, his vitality was severely depleted and he could only barely stabilize Nie Fenghua's aura. "Brat, you actually didn't die after taking a direct hit from this venerable." At that moment, a deep and powerful voice came from the void. A black-robed figure stood coldly in the void, his eyes as sharp as blades as they locked onto Nie Tian. That black-robed figure was the head of the Nine Profound Sect's 5 sovereigns, the Nine Profound Emperor. Empyrean Venerate Jiao Xian's figure stood in the void like a huge mountain, causing the surrounding void to tremble. His gaze was as deep as an abyss, filled with extreme indifference. But at this moment, there was an unconcealable trace of shock in his eyes. He was very surprised that Nie Tian hadn't died from the palm strike just now. That palm of his could destroy a mountain range, so one could imagine how powerful it was. However, Nie Tian was caught off guard and managed to take his palm head on. So how could he not be surprised? "Do you think that you're strong?" Nie Tian turned around and looked at the Nine Profound Emperor with terrifying killing intent in his eyes. His voice was cold. The Nine Profound Emperor's strength was indeed stronger than the Nine Tribulations' mystic venerable and the heavenly evil monarch, but it was only by a little. At this moment, the Nine Profound Emperor might not be Nie Tian's opponent if he was in his peak state. MHM. The Nine Profound Emperor's gaze sank with an unsightly expression. He was actually being looked down upon by Nie Tian. In the Myriad region, Nie Tian was the first person that dared to look down on him. "Brat, Earth's supremacy will give you a chance to live. If you can take another palm from Earth's supremacy, you and your friend can live," Emperor Jiao said coldly and domineeringly. The killing intent in his eyes was very obvious. Knitting his brows, Nie Tian's face was unsightly. In his current state, he couldn't take a palm from a Nine Profound Emperor unless he activated the demonic god physique. But with his current martial physique, he might suffer a backlash if he activated the demonic god physique. "Brat, you don't have the right to choose. You can only accept it." Looking at Nie Tian, Divine Monarch Jiao said in a deep voice, "Being killed by me with a single palm strike is your fate. What qualifications do you have to arrange my fate?" Nie Tian squinted his eyes as he coldly replied, "Isn't it just a palm? Come, you have guts." Looking at Nie Tian, a cold smile rose on the corner of the Nine Profound Emperor's lips. He seemed to be enjoying Nie Tian's struggle. This emperor likes to kill people with guts. QL 11. Chapter 3306. Unity of Man and Earth, Nye Tian. When desolate, ghost Boundless saw that Nye Tian was really going to fight with Emperor Jiuxian, he could not help but exclaim. At this time, Nye Tian had consumed too much energy. Most importantly, he had lost too much blood and his martial body was about to reach its limit. How can Nye Tian fight with Emperor Jiuxian in this state? Kid, I have seen countless geniuses, but this is the first time I have seen someone like you. If you were not standing on the opposite side of me, I would have accepted you as my disciple. But now, unfortunately, you can only die. Emperor Jiuxian said cold as he looked at Nye Tian with a strange light in his eyes. Nye Tian was only an 8th stage pseudo-sage, but he had seriously injured 2 supremes of the 9 Mysteries sect. Such combat strength was shocking. Emperor Jiuxian would never allow such a person to live. Nye Tian laughed coldly, disdain filling his face as he said, "Scum like you wouldn't accept me as your master, even if you wanted to." Huh? When Emperor Jiuxian heard Nye Tian's words, his face suddenly sank, and his eyes became extremely cold. He said coldly, "I didn't expect you to be so talented and arrogant. Make your move." Nye Tian's eyes were gloomy as he said cold, "I will send you on your way with 1 palm." Emperor Jiuxian responded coldly. His whole body's aura skyrocketed in an instant, and a terrifying wave of air rushed out. Suddenly, the void trembled as if the world was about to collapse. In the next moment, Emperor Jiuxian slapped down with a ferocious palm. It was extremely terrifying, and it directly pressed down on the void with a roar. Countless space-time cracks appeared in the surroundings, and the world seemed to be forcibly split at this moment. An incomparably powerful force fell down and pressed down on Nye Tian. Too terrifying. The people in the distance could feel the surging impact from a void, and their eyes could not help but tremble as they exclaimed. The power displayed by Emperor Venerate Jiuxian was so strong that even heaven and earth couldn't bear it. With such a terrifying palm strike, Emperor Venerable Jiuxian clearly intended to kill Nye Tian with a single blow. At this time, Nye Tian stood high up in the sky. Feeling the pressure from above, he closed his eyes. He seemed to have entered a mysterious realm. His divine sense had arrived in a strange space. The Trinity Holy Array. At this moment, he had entered the space of the tri-element sacred formation. He wanted to seek a breakthrough in his sword principle at this moment of life and death. This was a moment of life and death. Not only would Nye Tian's life be decided, but also Nye Fenghua, Jun Aoqing, Desolate Ghost, and even Cher, Rui Qianyu, Fat Cat, and the Ghost Emperor of the 9 Superbs. So in this battle, Nye Tian absolutely could not lose. He had to receive this palm strike. Stretching your neck to die? Seeing that Nye Tian had closed his eyes, Emperor Jiuxian couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth into a disdainful smile. He said coldly, "I thought you had a lot of backbone. It turns out that you're just going to die." Nye Tian's performance at this time made Emperor Jiuxian feel that he was waiting for death. He had already given up. The crowd looked at Nye Tian with a somewhat complicated expression. This kid is so talented, but he still has to give up in the face of Emperor Jiuxian. What's the use of talent? He's already an arrow at the end of its flight. There's no way he can resist. Accepting death calmly at this time can be considered a moving and tragic act. Alas, sure enough, no matter how strong a person's willpower is, when faced with an opponent who far surpasses them, their mentality will collapse. Everyone said, obviously thinking that Nye Tian had given up resisting. However, was the truth really as they said? Of course not. Boom! High up in the sky, Nye Tian suddenly opened his eyes, his whole body releasing a terrifying sword momentum. A violent, murderous sword intent rolled out, and at the same time, it surged with a bloody aura. He, Nye Tian, was not someone who would give up so easily. At this moment, he released all his sword intent, and at the same time, he burned his blood and chi, stimulating his sword intent to the extreme. And this time, There was an obvious change in his sword intent aura, almost a qualitative improvement. How is this possible? In the distance, desolate ghost, boundless ghost, looked at Nyetian, his eyes trembling in shock, not daring to believe his eyes. He was a spear user, and he also had a keen perception of the aura of sword intent. He sensed that Nyetian's sword Dao realm had actually reached the ultimate divine sword body realm. How is this possible? Nyetian was originally only at the ultimate divine sword soul realm. How could he break through to the ultimate divine sword body realm in an instant? Even if Nyetian had comprehended something, it was impossible for him to improve his sword Dao realm. Sword intent was a continuous process of accumulation, and it was not something that could be improved just by comprehending it. Celestial Evolution's sacred power. He integrated the Celestial Evolution's sacred power into his sword intent and forcefully increased his sword Dao realm. At this moment, Nie Fenghua actually woke up and spoke with a trembling voice. There was a burning passion in his eyes that could not be concealed. Nie Tian was simply a genius, a demon, and a monster. At this time, he could actually think of such a way to improve his sword intent. Nie Tian integrated the Celestial Evolution sacred power into his sword intent, just like how Nie Fenghua activated the sword seal in his body, forcefully increasing his sword Dao realm. To Nie Tian, the Celestial Evolution sacred power was like the Yuan explosion pill. However, the Yuan explosion pill increased his martial Dao realm, while the Celestial Evolution sacred power increased his sword Dao realm. Empyrean Venerable Jiuxian felt the aura around Nie Tian's body, and his eyes slightly froze. He could not help but exclaim in surprise, and then a trace of horror appeared in his eyes. He never thought that Nie Tian would be able to do such a shocking thing at the moment of life and death. Sacred heaven-defying sword, earth and human unification, stars and moons sync. It was at this moment that Nie Tian opened his mouth. His deep voice reverberated in the air, as sharp as a blade and as forceful as a clap of thunder. Each and every word he uttered was filled with a threatening, killing intent. Boom! In the next moment, Nie Tian struck out with the star's heaven slash in his hand. The void trembled, and the space collapsed. A blood-colored sword shadow that was tens of thousands of meters long appeared, like an ancient giant beast that opened its bloody mouth to devour everything. At this moment, everyone's eyes and mouths were wide open, but they were so shocked that they could not say a word. No words could express the shock in their hearts. The power that Nie Tian's sword had exploded with could devour the heavens and split the earth. Human unification, stars, and moons sync. This sword was a new sword technique that Nie Tian had comprehended in the tripartite holy formation. The so-called human unification was to merge the star slash with the earth sword and the moon swallow with the earth sword into an even stronger sword technique. The human unification, coupled with the Celestial Evolution sacred power and the divine sword will of the ultimate sword body, the power of this sword was beyond imagination. Boom! Boom! In the void, the palm shadow was like a mountain, and the sword shadow was like a beast. Two extremely terrifying forces tore through the void, and the violent aura was endless. Rumble. Crack, crack, crack. In the next instant, the two extremely powerful forces collided with each other, and there was a terrifying explosion in the void. Waves of terrifying forces spread out, and the space and time instantly collapsed. Chapter 33:07. Chapter 33:02. Chapter 33:02. Bizarre, death-terrifying noises constantly resounded in the sky, as if the heavens and earth were exploding. Boundless waves swept through space like a ferocious beast that devoured and annihilated everything. The crowd was completely dumbfounded by the scene before them. They could not believe their eyes. This level of battle had far exceeded their understanding of the martial Tao. They couldn't imagine that this battle would be so terrifying. That was especially true of Nie Tian, who, in a desperate situation, burst forth with shocking power. Boom, boom, boom. After a long time, a series of ear-piercing explosions rang out. The terrifying palm image in the sky actually collapsed, turning into endless waves that swept in all directions. Boom! At this moment, the Jiuxian overlord felt a terrifying force rushing towards him. Immediately after, the space around him was filled with a terrifying, strangling force, locking his entire body in place. In the next moment, a horrifying and bloody scene occurred. PFFF, PFFF, PFFF. Countless bloody wounds appeared on Supremacy Jiuxuan's body, turning him into a bloody man in an instant. Damn it! This sudden scene caused Jiuxian's expression to turn extremely ugly. He let out a low roar and released a terrifying aura from his body. He forcefully broke free from the strangling shackles and retreated in a frenzy. On the other side, Nietian's figure also retreated madly, rushing out of the turbulent void. When everyone saw Nietian and Emperor Jiuxian silhouettes, their eyes violently trembled, especially Emperor Jiuxian, who was covered in blood. It was too shocking. Without a doubt, Emperor Jiuxian had lost in this confrontation. The arrogant Emperor Jiuxian boasted that he could kill Nietian with a single palm, but not only did he fail to kill Nietian, he even suffered heavy injuries. Emperor, the Nine Tribulations Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch exclaimed as they looked at Emperor Jiuxian. They couldn't believe their eyes. The head of the Nine Profound Sect's 5 sovereigns, Emperor Jiuxian, was actually heavily injured by Nietian. Was this really not an illusion? How could Nietian be so powerful? The Nine Tribulations Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch had never seen Emperor Jiuxian in such a pathetic state. Even back then, when Emperor Jiuxian fought eternally merciless, he was only slightly inferior. But right now, Nietian's sword had practically suppressed Emperor Jiuxian. How is this possible? At this time, Sovereign Jiuxuan's eyes were trembling as he looked at Nietian with incomparable shock. He no longer had the arrogance he had before. Instead, even his voice was slightly trembling, filled with deep fear. Emperor Jiuxian, this is your strength? This is the fate that you've arranged for me? Nie Tianling sneered with cold, killing intent flickering in his eyes. You pfft. Every single word was akin to a slap on Emperor Jiuxian's face. His face sank, and just when he wanted to speak, he vomited a mouthful of blood. His silhouette took several steps back, and he nearly lost his balance. There was a massive amount of sword intent pouring into his body, and he couldn't suppress it any longer. Emperor, the Nine Tribulations Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch, immediately took a step forth to support Emperor Jiuxian. This was the first time that the 3 sovereigns of the Nine Profound Sect were heavily injured by the same person. Emperor Jiuxian, what else do you have to say? Nie Tianling smiled as he took a step forth. Boy, you want a chance for yourself to live, you. Imperial Venerable Jiuxian took a deep breath and spoke in a low voice, but his face suddenly stiffened, and his expression became extremely pained. MHM? When Ye Tian saw this scene, he squinted his eyes, and his face changed. He could sense that the aura within Emperor Jiuxian's body had suddenly become unstable. Emperor, are you all right? The Nine Tribulations Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarchs' faces changed as they nervously asked. Boom. Emperor Jiuxian opened his mouth with a sinister expression. He couldn't even speak before his body suddenly exploded and turned into a crimson radiance. The Nine Tribulations Sovereign and Heavenly Evil Monarch stood beside Emperor Jiuxian with their faces covered in blood. The two of them were frozen on the spot and couldn't speak a word. Emperor Jiuxian, the supreme powerhouse of the Nine Profound Sect, the leader of the 5 sovereigns, died. The sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They were dumbfounded and were unable to react for a long time. Nie Tian was also stunned by the scene before him, and a puzzled look appeared on his face. His sword strike just now had indeed injured the 9 Mystic Arch, but it was far from being fatal. Empyrean Venerable Jiuxian's aura suddenly became berserk, and then it exploded. What's going on? Nie Tian couldn't figure it out. Emperor Jiuxian is dead. After a long time, The Nine Tribulations sovereign and heavenly evil monarch finally recovered from their shock, and their eyes trembled. At this moment, they still couldn't accept the truth. The fact that divine monarch Nine Mysteries had been killed by Nietian with a single sword strike was simply unbelievable. Heavenly evil monarch, let Jun Aoqing go, and I'll let you guys leave. Nietian's voice resounded as he looked at the heavenly evil monarch with a cold gaze. Emperor Jiuxian's death was too bizarre, which was something that Nietian never expected, but it was definitely a good thing for him. The heavenly evil monarch's face was unsightly as he looked at the Nine Tribulations sovereign. The Nine Tribulations sovereign could still be considered calm as his cold gaze wandered around Nietian. Brat, that sword from before must have exhausted all of your energy, right? We don't want to fight anymore, so why don't you make a deal? You give us the item in the coffin, and we'll return the Netherworld Princess to you. What do you think? The Nine Tribulations sovereign could tell that although Nietian looked ferocious on the surface, his aura was much weaker than before. Furthermore, with Nietian's strength, he wouldn't let them go so easily if he really had the strength. This undoubtedly meant that Nietian couldn't hold on any longer, and he was just holding on. However, he wasn't certain about this. Furthermore, Nietian's strength was too bizarre, and if they made a move, Nietian might unleash another terrifying attack. Hence, the Nine Tribulations sovereign chose the safest method, which was to exchange Jun Aoqing for the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin. Nietian's gaze was dark as he nodded his head. The Nine Tribulations sovereign's guess was right. He had already reached his limit, and he was only holding on with a single breath. If the Nine Tribulations sovereign didn't die, then the situation would be unfavorable. Okay, the Nine Tribulations sovereign acknowledged and glanced at the heavenly evil monarch before he flew towards the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin. He came to the top of the Emperor's coffin and looked inside. What he saw made his face stiffen, and he was stunned. Seeing that the Nine Tribulations sovereign was stunned, Nietian couldn't help knitting his brows. He exclaimed in shock before he arrived beside the coffin. Chapter 33:08. Two idiots empty. Nietian's eyes weren't deceiving him. The Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin was empty. There was nothing inside. Who would have thought that the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin was empty? This is impossible. This is impossible. After a long time, the Nine Tribulations mystic venerate finally reacted. He let out a shrill, and ear-piercing scream. He tried his best to use Kuyo Onaguchi and the others to open the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin, but the coffin was empty. How could he accept this? Sovereign, what's going on? The heavenly evil monarch, who was waiting by the side, shouted when he saw the Nine Tribulation sovereign going crazy. He wanted to know what was going on, but he did not dare to approach. Nietian also went blank for a while, his eyebrows furrowed deeply. Nine Tribulation sovereign, you've seen it. There's nothing in the Emperor's coffin. Let her go now. Nietian looked at the Nine Tribulation sovereign and said cold. Nietian was also surprised that there was nothing in the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin. However, he did not care about that. Saving Jun Aoqing was the most important thing. The Nine Tribulation sovereign was stunned. He looked at Nietian and suddenly shouted, Brat, it must be your doing. You took the thing in the Emperor's coffin. I took it. Nietianling smiled and said, From the moment the Emperor's coffin appeared to the moment it opened, I did not even get close. How could I have the opportunity to take the thing in the coffin? If you want to go back on your word, then let's fight. The Nine Tribulation sovereign's face froze, and he was speechless. Nietian was right. He did not get close to the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin. Among everyone present, the Ghost Valley's 7 disasters were the only ones who got close to the coffin. However, the Ghost Valley's 7 disasters were killed by the Saint Corpse's ominous energy. Could it be that the thing in the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin was the Saint Corpse's ominous energy? Why was there no Saint Corpse in the coffin? The Nine Tribulation sovereign's eyes trembled. He could not accept this fact. Could it be that he had meticulously planned for such a long time just for a lump of divine corpse baleful chi? Shinzun, what's wrong? The heavenly evil monarch couldn't help hollering from the side. Of course, He had heard the conversation between Nietian and the Nine Tribulations mystic venerate. However, he would not give up until he saw the Ghost Valley Emperor's coffin with his own eyes. Come and see for yourself. The Nine Tribulation mystic sovereign roared before he appeared beside the heavenly evil monarch to help the latter look after Jun Aoqing. Glancing at Nietian, the heavenly evil monarch's eyes trembled. Evidently, he was somewhat afraid, but after a brief pondering, he still flew towards the coffin. Jun Aoqing was still in their hands. Even if Nietian had the strength to kill him, he wouldn't dare to do so. But when the heavenly evil monarch saw the Ghost Valley's emperor's coffin, his face froze, and he became speechless. His face was unsightly. Although he was mentally prepared, it was still hard to accept when he saw the empty coffin of the Ghost Valley Emperor. They had put in so much effort and paid such a huge price, but there was nothing in the Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin. How would he accept this? Heavenly evil monarch, you've already seen it. Let her go. Nietian did not give the heavenly evil monarch too much time and said with a cold flicker in his eyes. The heavenly evil monarch's face was unsightly, but he was still unwilling to give up. His divine sense swept across the coffin, but he couldn't find anything. Nietian, we're gentlemen, so don't play any tricks. The heavenly evil monarch retreated as he looked at Nietian. Release her, Nietian coldly said as he stared at the heavenly evil monarch with killing intent. Okay. The heavenly evil monarch returned to the Nine Tribulations mystic venerate and nodded his head. After a brief hesitation, the Nine Tribulations mystic venerate released Jun Aoqing. Nietian. The moment Jun Aoqing broke free, her silhouette flickered and appeared beside Nietian. She threw herself into the latter's embrace with tears rolling down her cheeks. It's fine now. Nietian comforted Jun Aoqing, but his eyes were fixed on the Nine Tribulations mystic venerate and the heavenly evil monarch. At this moment, the two of them had already retreated tens of thousands of meters away. However, the two of them did not leave, but looked at Nietian as well. Nietian, you killed the Nine Mystic Emperor of our Nine Profound sect, and the Nine Profound sect will not let you off. The heavenly evil monarch looked at Nietian from afar with a cold smile. Nietian, our Nine Profound sect will not live under the same sky as you. The Nine Tribulations mystic venerate threatened with a murderous expression. Nine Profound sect? Nietianling smiled as killing intent flickered in his eyes. It won't be long before I personally step into the Nine Profound sect and annihilate your entire sect. Sensing Nietian's killing intent, the heavenly evil monarch and the Nine Tribulations mystic venerate's eyes trembled. They did not speak a word and turned into two streaks of light as they disappeared into the horizon. The three sovereigns of the Nine Profound sect came to the Saint Soul Academy at the same time, but this was the outcome. Everyone looked in the direction that the heavenly evil monarch and the Nine Profound sect disappeared with complicated gazes. Soon, their gazes shifted to Nietian with unconcealable shock and fear in their eyes. The strength that Nietian had displayed had far exceeded their understanding. At this moment, Nietian suddenly turned around and swept his gaze across everyone as he barked, "Get lost!" His voice wasn't loud, but it was like a clap of thunder in the ears of everyone present. Everyone felt their souls tremble. This was the spirit of an expert, the deterrence of an expert. If Nietian was just an ordinary Eighth-Order pseudo-martial sage, he would definitely be mocked by everyone for his roar. In the next moment, everyone reacted and moved. In the blink of an eye, all the figures disappeared without a trace. Aside from Nietian and Jun Aoqing, only Nie Fenghua and Desolate Ghost were left. Jun Aoqing had calmed down by now. When she saw Nietian's pale face, she couldn't help asking nervously, "Nietian, are you all right?" "I'm not." Nietian's eyes flickered. He wanted to hold on, but before he could finish his sentence, he vomited a mouthful of blood. Nietian. Jun Aoqing immediately supported Nietian as her eyes flickered with unease. Taking a deep breath, Nietian consumed a few divine elixirs, but his face was still as pale as a sheet. His injuries were too severe. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let the nine tribulation mystic sovereign and heavenly evil monarch leave so easily. Merging the celestial evolution's sacred power with the demonic god's sword intent to forcefully raise his sword Dao realm was a huge blow to Nietion's martial physique. At this moment, most of the meridians in his body were in a ruptured state. Even if he had the power of the stars and the sovereign dragon vein, it would still take him a few days to recover. Nietion took a few deep breaths to stabilize his aura. Right now, what he needed the most was rest. Ha ha ha. Two idiots. But at this moment, the Ghost Emperor suddenly let out a weird cry and burst into laughter. Nietion was stunned. He had no idea why the Ghost Emperor was laughing. What mystic sovereign or evil sovereign? They're all idiots. The Ghost Emperor laughed as if he had been holding it in for a long time. His eyes were filled with unconcealable excitement as he said, "The Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin is such a good thing, but you actually don't want it? We're retard." Ghost Emperor, did you find something in the Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin? Nietion couldn't help asking with his brows knitted. Hee. The Ghost Emperor calmed down and chuckled. Don't need to find anything? The Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin itself is the best thing. Chapter 3309. The Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin. Nietion's eyes trembled. It looked like the Ninth Order evil sovereign and heavenly evil monarch missed out on something good. Ghost Emperor, what's the secret in the Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin? A brief moment later, Nietion became cold and couldn't help asking. The Ghost Emperor smiled. The material of the Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin is special. It's the legendary Wood of Fortune. Wood of Fortune? Nietion's eyes trembled when he heard this name. Yeah, the Ghost Emperor heavily nodded his head. The Wood of Fortune comes from a tree of fortune, which is one of the 5 legendary sacred trees. The Wood of Fortune contains a profound power of fortune, and it's rumored that it can even give birth to life. But rumors are just rumors, and they can't be taken seriously. In any case, this emperor has never seen any life being born from the power of fortune. But the power of fortune has the ability to perfectly store a cultivator's blood energy. Many experts would use the coffin of fortune to preserve their martial physique after they fall. But it's a pity that the power of fortune can also absorb the cultivator's blood energy. The reason why the Ghost Valley's Emperor's coffin is empty is because the corpse in the coffin was absorbed by the Wood of Fortune. After hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nietion's eyes couldn't help but tremble. He said, "You're saying that the Emperor's coffin originally contained a saint's corpse, but its power was absorbed by the coffin." That's right. The Ghost Emperor heavily nodded his head. Blood energy is the essence of a cultivator's power. It's formed from the accumulated blood energy of a cultivator after their death, and it contains great power. I understand now. Nietion's eyes trembled. The Emperor's coffin is filled with blood energy. That also means that this Emperor's coffin contains the full power of a Saint Realm cultivator. QL11. The Ghost Emperor's eyes flickered for a while, but he smiled and said, Nietion, the original owner of the Emperor's coffin, was not an ordinary Saint Realm warrior. I guess that he was the ancestor of the Ghost Valley clan. Furthermore, there shouldn't be just one person in the coffin, but 2 corpses. Nietion's eyebrows furrowed as he went blank for a moment. Why? It's simple. There are 2 divine evolution souls in the Emperor's steel. Of course, there are 2 Sage Realm warriors. The Ghost Emperor laughed strangely and said, "Do you think a Sage Realm martial artist will produce 2 divine evolution souls after his death?" Nietion's face darkened, unable to say anything. The Emperor's coffin contained the power of 2 super powerful Sage Realm warriors. It was truly terrifying. However, he still had some doubts in his heart. He could not help but ask, "Ghost Monarch, if the coffin contains such a powerful force, why can't I sense it at all?" Furthermore, the 9 tribulation profound sovereign and heavenly evil monarch did not sense it. The Ghost Monarch chuckled in disdain. The Tree of Fortune can conceal any aura. Not to mention, you guys, even I can't sense it. This. Nietion's face sank as he was left speechless. Then how did you know? This Emperor guessed it. The ghost monarch replied before Nyetian could finish his words. Guessed it. Nyetian let out a weird cry as the corner of his lips twitched. The ghost monarch actually used a guess on this matter. Furthermore, he even said it in such a serious manner, which left Nyetian speechless. Brat, do you not trust me? The ghost monarch knitted his brows as he curled his lips. Although I can't sense the aura in the coffin, I can still recognize the Tree of Fortune. Take a closer look and see if there are any fine crimson patterns on the coffin. Nyetian knitted his brows as he immediately looked over. Sure enough, he saw dense crimson patterns on the coffin. Those crimson patterns were too small and dense. Looking closely, they looked like the growth rings of a tree. However, the crimson color was glaring, as if it had been soaked in blood. The Tree of Fortune was black in color, which perfectly covered the crimson color. This was also the reason why Nyetian did not notice those crimson patterns. That's the bloodline circuit. The ghost monarch smiled as he continued. Only the blood of the strongest cultivator can leave a bloodline circuit on the Tree of Fortune. Yeah, Nyetian heavily nodded his head as he believed the ghost monarch's words. However, he knitted his brows in the next moment and asked, "What's the use of so much energy in the coffin? What's the use?" The ghost monarch yelled when he heard Nyetian's words. If he wasn't his soul form, he would definitely vomit a mouthful of blood from the anger. Nyetian actually asked what the use of the coffin that contained the blood of two top-tiered powerhouses was. Little Nya, let me put it this way. If you enter the coffin now, you can definitely break through to the Sage Realm in 10 years at most. The ghost monarch's lips twitched as he said in a deep voice, 10 years to break through to the Sage Realm? Isn't that a little slow? Nyetian frowned and murmured, You. The ghost monarch's face stiffened. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. 10 years to break through to the Sage Realm? How can Nyetian say that it was slow? Even in the sacred world, it was rare for a cultivator to break through to the Sage Realm from the rank 9 pseudo-Sage Realm in 10 years. However, breaking through to the Saint Realm in just 10 years was simply a miracle, a myth, in the Realmverse under such a huge world restriction. However, Nyetian actually felt that it was too slow. How could the ghost monarch not be angry? However, this was to be expected. After all, Nyetian's speed of improvement was too fast. It made the ghost monarch feel that 10 years was too long. In any case, I won't lie in this coffin, Nyetian said with a faint smile when he saw the ghost monarch's reaction. He could break through to the Sage Realm with his own ability. He didn't need the coffin's help. You can't lie down even if you want to. The ghost monarch laughed and said, Wouldn't it be a waste for you to use such a good thing? You're not a member of the Gigu clan. How much blood energy can you absorb in the coffin? Nyetian's eyes narrowed after hearing the ghost monarch's words. He said, You're saying that the most suitable person to cultivate in the coffin is Jing Yue? Of course. The ghost monarch's eyes trembled. His expression became more solemn as he said, That little girl is from the Gigu clan. She has the bloodline power of the Gigu clan in her body. It resonates with the blood energy in the coffin. It's the most cost-effective way for her to absorb the power of the coffin. If she's allowed to cultivate in the coffin, she will only need a year to break through to the Sage Realm. A year to break through to the Sage Realm. Nyetian was startled by the ghost monarch's words. His face changed, and he was dumbfounded. Jing Yue was only a demi-saint, but the Gigu Emperor's coffin could actually allow her to break through to the Sage Realm in a year? This was way too abnormal. The Gigu Emperor's coffin was too terrifying. If the 9 Tribulations Sovereign and the Heavenly Evil Monarch were here and knew what they missed, they would probably die from anger. At this moment, Nyetian suddenly thought of Jing Yue, and his eyes trembled as he exclaimed, Jing Yue,